I live in a normal suburban town.
Stream.
It was 4th of July weekend, so I had
We
a mini
are
party in my
playing
backyard.
Piss Dungeon again. I
My
think
parents were
my
away,
last
so
stream
it would work out perfectly.
was I need to beat the game
I
normally.
invited
with
about
every,
20 people.
Hero
We have
or
a
the
pool,
certain
so I
hero
told people to bring their
before
bathing
I go
suits.
back to the top.
I also had some fireworks left over from last year that I told everyone we'd shoot off towards the end of the night. I tried to keep the gathering strictly in the backyard because I didn't fully trust people not to make a mess inside the house.
Oh yeah, this is the video of my Mr. Nightmare.
Everything went fine.
3 scary true
Anywhere
4th
from
of July
20 to 30
stories.
people showed up.
I love listening
Everyone
to this
stayed in the
nightmare.
yard.
It's
Some people jumped in the pool,
weird to say it's
others
common,
played drinking
but-
games. And later in the night, we shot off some fireworks in the street. The party started to die down after 12, and by 1:30, everyone was gone. There were a million red plastic cups in the yard, and tons of empty cans and bottles. But that was a mess to worry about tomorrow. I was beat.
yeah.
I went inside and changed out of my clothes and brushed my teeth, then crawled into bed. I was pretty buzzed, so I didn't think I'd have any trouble falling asleep. Suddenly, outside, I heard firecrackers going off. It sounded like it was right outside my window, in our backyard. I got up and looked out the window, and to my confusion and downright horror, I saw a line of firecrackers going off next to our pool. My initial reaction was to yell out the window who did that. I figured it had to be one of my friends who stayed behind pranking me. I ran downstairs
If
into
you're
the
at a
back
party
door.
and like
I slid open the
you
glass
feel your
door,
friends
but
are
kept the
still
bug
behind, I would
screen
be,
door
like,
closed.
scared. But
I
if
looked
was
around
with
the
my
backyard
family
and
I
said
heard
again,
fireworks
who's
at
out
night
there?
in my yard,
By now, the
I
firecrackers had
wouldn't be
finished
so
going
scared
off.
because I know.
Someone
Well, I
was
wouldn't
back
know,
there,
but
and they just set them off.
I'm pretty sure someone just like
That doesn't
chucked over
happen
the
by
fence.
accident.
Look at this.
I
Like,
texted
there's
as
houses
many
all
people
around.
as I
Who
could
knows if
think
they're
to,
his
and then the
firecrackers.
group chat asking who was still at my house. Only a few people answered, most likely because a lot of people were asleep already. Everyone who answered said they're in bed or at home though. I stepped outside into the backyard and looked around for a minute. And when I saw no one, I went back in, shut the door and locked it, and went back upstairs to my room. I was barely in bed for 5 minutes before hearing something come from the upstairs living room down the hall.
Oh fuck that.
Then I heard the sound of a beer pong ball falling off the table and bouncing on the wood floor. My heart started to race.
Oh, yeah, that's freaky.
Was someone in the house? Did one
That's
of my
the
friends
worst noise to
pass
hear.
out on one of the downstairs couches? Or maybe in one of the other bedrooms? While this seemed like a possibility, I wasn't about to go out there. I got out of bed and went to the door to put my ear up to it and listen. I didn't hear anything for a moment. I waited, and then, clear as day, I heard footsteps approaching my door, then the door knocked.
Their picnic? Our picnic. Pick up.
Knob jiggling. The door was locked. There was a loud bang on the door. I screamed through the door to get out of here or I'll shoot you. A deep male's voice on the other side said, "Jay, you in there?" And I heard another
What?
deep voice in the room with me say, "Yeah." I turned to the corner by my drawers and realized there was someone there. I screamed my soul out as this man came over to me holding what looked like a gun in his hand. He then
Bruh.
put his hand over my mouth and told me to shut up or he'd kill me. He then unlocked the door and opened it, and there was another masked man. They whispered to each other as they had me at gunpoint, now sitting on the bed. One of them
does
then
this
said
have
to
4th of
me,
July?
"Stay right there and don't move." The other guy left the room and went straight to my parents' room. He came back and asked the combination to my parents' safe, which I said I had no idea, which was the truth. There were a total of 3 intruders in the house.
Wow.
One kept me at gunpoint while the other 2 pilfered the house, stealing my mom's jewelry that was left out, along with any other valuables they found. After the longest 10 minutes of my life, one of the men yelled, "Let's go," and the man who had me at gunpoint left the room, and I heard them all hurry out the back door. I tried to see what kind of car they left in through a window, but it appeared they didn't park near my house. I called 911 right away. As soon as police arrived, they asked if we had any cameras around the house, which we didn't. They then asked if I got any of the names or saw any of their faces, and all I could give them was that one of them was referred to as Jay by the others. They asked if I saw the getaway vehicle, and I said no. The police asked a bunch of neighboring houses if they had cameras that may have picked up on the robbers. And after my neighbors all reviewed their doorbell cameras, none of them picked anything up. I think my house was targeted by a group who saw I was having a party, and they set the firecrackers off to lead me outside of the house so they could sneak in.
Yo,
That's the most
that's
likely
some
explanation
Mission
to me.
Impossible shit right
My
there.
parents were livid with me for having the party, as they believed that led to the robbery.
Yeah, probably.
They also were relieved I'm okay and sympathetic that I had to experience this. Because of this experience, I'm a strong advocate for having security cameras around your house.
Oh, I think I'm dead.
It was 4th of July 2015. The park by my house was having their annual fireworks show, but it always gets way too crowded and chaotic. Plus, parking is non-existent. Little did most people know there's a little sump next to the park that had a perfect view of the fireworks
Sump.
show.
That's a
I
word.
found this out through one of my friends one year. This sump was accessible through one of the dead-end residential streets that ran alongside
Come on,
the park.
can you be even better one than that?
Since the 4th was on a Saturday this year, it would probably be even more crowded.
Oh god, it's
It would
cursed.
also make a perfect date. I was talking to this girl Ashley I met in one of my classes the previous semester, and we'd already been on a few dates over the course of a few months. I asked her if she'd want to go to the fireworks show with me, and she said she already really wanted to go, so absolutely. She came to my house first, and then we walked from my house to the park since it was so close. And we were bringing alcohol. I told her we'd have our own little private spot to watch the show at that no one else really knew about, and she said she was super down. Along with some tequila and soda, I brought a big blanket for us to lay on in my backpack. There was already a lot of commotion by
Guys,
the
see,
park
like,
entrance.
I want to narrate towards like
We
Mr.
walked right
Nightmare.
past
he,
it as
he,
the
like,
cars
he
were
says,
piling
he's got
up
such
in
a
the
good
parking
voice.
lot.
And even if
We
my
continued
stutter, I
down the
couldn't
dead
even
end
do
where
it.
the sump was. The sump was rectangular and fenced off, but it was very easy to get inside. The gate wasn't even locked. Inside the sump was just a bunch of trees, and then at the bottom of it, a small grass clearing, where we planned to lay out the blanket. I led us to the gate, which yet again wasn't locked, and I quietly opened and closed it. I told her to be careful as we walked downhill into the sump. It was around 8 o'clock, which was when the fireworks were supposed to start. I laid out the blanket on the smoothest part of the ground. I didn't take into account how dark it would be in there before the fireworks started.
Bro,
So we both turned on our phone flashlights and laid them down just as temporary lights. We started making tequila sodas right away. From down in the sump, we couldn't really hear any other people from up in the park, just the occasional car horns honking. It was right around the time we started
which
the
one
first
next?
drink that
God
both of
damn
us
it.
heard something from behind us. It was like the sound of brush being stepped on.
bruh.
We turned around to see darkness. I pointed my flashlight over there, but it didn't really reach that far. The iPhones back then were like the 6s. I don't remember their flashlights being the best.
Oh, no,
Ashley
no.
asked me how likely it was that other people would come down here. I replied that other than a couple of my friends knowing about it, I doubted anyone else would come down. I explained to her that it could have been a small animal. The first fireworks were shot into the air, which startled us. The fireworks would light up the entire sump briefly, though, especially the bigger ones and when multiple were shot at once. At this point, we drank and watched the fireworks for a solid few minutes, before again, I heard something behind us. I don't think
the
Ashley
woods?
heard it, but she
I
looked
was not
back
paying
when I
attention.
looked and asked what I was looking at. I said nothing, not wanting to scare her. This was my idea after all, but now I was getting paranoid. I decided to turn around and stare into the trees and brush, and as the sump lit up again from multiple big fireworks exploding, I saw a black figure standing in the trees and brush above us. They appeared to be hiding. I whispered, "There's someone up there." She turned and looked, but now it went dark again because there was a short few second gap in fireworks. When the sump lit up again, the figure I saw wasn't there anymore. I surely freaked her out though, because she said she wanted to leave. Since we were both definitely creeped out now, we agreed to leave while the fireworks were still going, lighting the sump up.
The sump.
Packed up the blanket and alcohol.
That's
Of
new word
course,
for my
the fireworks
vocabulary.
show ended right there. It was now dark and quiet again in the sump, so we turned our flashlights back on and walked up the hill. As we neared the top, I couldn't help but shine my flashlight into the trees in the general vicinity that I saw that figure before, and I felt my
Shit!
heart skip
Just
a
wasted
beat,
that potion.
seeing a black figure again, maybe 10 feet away. It appeared to be a person in a black hoodie or robe with the hood up, even though it was like an 82-degree night. They were standing behind a big tree, but then, as if in response to the light, they started to run through the brush at us. I pushed Ashley along to hurry up as they yelled to go. We got the hell out of there and basically ran down the street until we were around other people. We weren't followed. I'm not sure what that person was doing in there, but it seemed they were stalking us the entire fireworks show, and them running
weird.
towards us meant they wanted to hurt us. I only saw one person, so I believe they were alone, but I could be wrong. I stayed clear from going in that sump ever again.
Oh shit, just fucked up the rat.
After several friends of mine and I were done lighting off fireworks, one of my friends, Zach, took about 4 of us to this unfinished house in a relatively new neighborhood. 2 of the people became disinterested pretty quickly, so they left before we even started examining the house, leaving only 3 of us, Zach, myself, and Adam. None of the walls were completed on the house. It mainly just consisted of floorboards and 2x4s holding up the place. You could see outside in most parts of the house, and the basement had a cement floor and cement walls. The house consisted of 2 floors and a basement, so 3 floors in total. The steps were completed enough so that we could travel up and down them easily. As we started inspecting the house, Zach told us to keep our phone flashlights off as much as possible because the houses next to us were finished and inhabited, and the people living there might call the cops if they noticed us snooping around. We therefore were mainly just going off the moonlight from outside for vision. The 3 of us stuck together most of the time. As soon as we walked upstairs, we could hear a voice from the main floor or the basement, so we would run downstairs to find out what it is, and as soon as we did that, we would hear a noise from upstairs, so we would run up there. This pattern continued for a good while. We assumed the noises were just the wind knocking over pieces of wood, pipes, or whatever else that was lying around, or it was some kind of animal running around the house. Eventually, as we were walking slowly in the basement, trying to discover who or what it was making the noises, I saw someone slowly walking up the stairs next to me. I could see a light emanate from his or her phone, but it wasn't strong enough for me to be able to see who he or she was. I whispered to Zach and Adam, "Is that you?" They both said it wasn't them, and it turns out that they were both right in front of me. Shortly after I asked that, I saw a bunch of pipes that were leaned against the unfinished wall fall over down the stairs. It didn't look like they fell over by accident. It looked like someone deliberately pushed them over. At that point, I knew whatever we were hearing was not an animal or the wind. I knew that someone else was in the house. After that encounter, the 3 of us stormed out of the house. We all stood on the neighborhood road a decent distance from the house, discussing what just happened. Zach was convinced that the person I saw was one of the 2 friends who decided to leave earlier. I told him that there was no way it was either of them. One of them was a girl who didn't want to get her shoes dirty, and the other was a guy who was dating this girl and was around her all the time, so I couldn't picture either of them doing that.
Ah, damn.
I tried to convince him that it wasn't them, but he didn't fully believe me. He then realized that he lost his keys and he had to go back in the house to find them anyway. That left Adam and I to stand around to wait for him. As Adam and I were waiting for Zach, I thought I could see a big, dark figure coming from around the right side of the house, but I couldn't tell for sure. We were still trying to not use our flashlights so the neighbors wouldn't notice us. After a few minutes, Zach came back with his keys and said he saw someone in the house again. I told him what I saw. Still convinced that it was our other 2 friends messing with us, he walked around the left side of the house. Adam and I followed him. When he got to the back of the house, I saw him jump up and say, "Run." We ran away. He later said he saw a tall, dark figure reaching his arms up and slowly moving towards him. I ran out to the road in front of the house. I thought both Adam and Zach were following me, but I could only see Zach behind me. When I stopped running, there was a giant dumpster in front of me. I was on the left side of it, and Zach was on the other side. I saw Zach look to his right, to an area behind the dumpster that I couldn't see from where I was standing. I heard him say, "We don't want any trouble." He then told me to run to his truck. He drove me to the house in his truck, and Adam drove separately. Apparently, Adam had already gone to his car. I ran towards the truck and we took
Adam
off.
dipped.
Zach told me that he saw a big, dark figure approaching him. After he said, "We don't want any trouble," he saw the figure going behind the dumpster, heading in my direction, and that's why he told me to run for the truck. Adam later mentioned that as he took off in his car, he saw 3 figures running after him in the rearview mirror.
3 figures.
Chances are these figures could have been neighbors messing with us, but the way in which they acted was very strange, considering how big and tall some of them seemed to be. It's hard for me to believe that they were just teenagers. Zach was in his early 20s, Adam was in his late teens, and I was in my late 20s when this happened. I can't help but wonder who those people were, and how capable they were of doing something far worse than just messing with us and scaring us away. I can't help but wonder if maybe there were some weird members of a cult who regularly got together in that house late at night, and that's why they were trying to scare us away. Since this was the 4th of July, there was a bigger chance of weirdos walking around. But Zach said that there were people who chased after him another time he was at that same house. I wasn't there with him that time, so I can't go into too much detail on that story, but I wonder if those were the same people.
I don't know. Should I use chain and shield? Yeah, I will. Let me. I guess I'll take the weapon.
Opera GX, the most web browser ever made. Do you struggle with the lack of notifications? You don't? Well, I think you do. You clearly
6 of my favorite scary true stories of the year. Oh yeah, that's what I like from Mr. Nightmare.
I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seemed like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me there were absolutely no problems with the car. He introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early. It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because it was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I looked over to see if anyone was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight.
Shit.
The only car in the property was an old pickup truck.
Item?
I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. It was the right address.
I don't
The doorbell
think my shield's
button was
cursed.
missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked every once in a while for exactly
better
5
not be
minutes
cursed,
before
I'm getting
deciding
mad.
to give the man a call. So I dialed his number, and
Oh,
I heard the
that's-
sound of his phone ringing from inside the house.
That's bad.
I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house.
No.
I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anyone was inside. Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being.
What?
I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see 2 of the blinds creased open. Somebody was at that window, watching me. You could probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being. Given that there was no car there, leads me to believe that whoever that man was wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads me to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door.
You can call the police or anything? Like, what the fuck?
This happened when I was really little and often left alone with
Dude,
my
I'm not
single
doing
mom.
so well.
She always came to check on me every night when she would get up to go to the bathroom. This one night in particular, I remember waking up thinking I heard something in my closet. I looked up and my mom was at the foot of my bed giving me a playful wave.
Huh?
She told me to go back to sleep. She then went into my closet and pulled the door until it was just barely open, and she just stood in there, poking her head through the crack of the barely open closet. I remember vividly seeing her
that's
eye
fucked.
peeking through the crack at me. I laughed like any little kid would do in that situation, and then fell asleep moments later. When I was eating cereal the next morning, I asked my mom why she was hiding in my closet last night, and she just stopped and gave me a puzzled and concerned look.
Oh.
Told me she hadn't been in the room all night. At first she assumed somebody had broken into the house,
Yeah, I
but
would.
she soon realized it was some kind of hallucination or dream. Since this experience,
Nah.
I've only had 2 other hallucinations, neither of them as vivid or as creepy as this one.
Shit, I'm getting my shit. Oh, dude, I'm getting my. I'm about to. This sucks. I need a strength potion. And I don't know what these amp
In the year
potions are.
2009, I was spending a weekend with my
I-
uncle on his
hold on,
ranch
did I
when
find
my parents
strengths?
were renovating the new house we had just bought. It was my second night there, a Saturday, and it happened to be during one of the biggest thunderstorms of the year.
Yeah, it's red.
I'd say there were
Oh,
at
it's right
least
there.
3
It's
crashes
literally
of
right
thunder
there.
and lightning per minute. And we were in the heart of the
Okay.
storm because the thunder would crash not even a second after the lightning would. I always enjoyed listening to storms while laying in bed. So I stayed up a little later watching TV, just enjoying the ambiance. After the movie I was watching finally ended, I turned off the TV and tried to fall asleep.
Bro, leave me alone.
As I heard the lightning strike from outside, I could have sworn I heard some kind of metallic thud coming from outside at the same time. I didn't pay it too much mind. 20 seconds later, I could have sworn I heard it again. A very distinct metallic thud coming from outside to match the timing of the lightning. I really don't mean to make this sound like a cliche horror story, but my uncle really is a kind of creepy guy, and I was never close with him even remotely. So for that reason, I didn't feel right going to wake him up. I just tried to forget about it.
Okay, this better not be cursed.
Now I was getting
Ooh.
concerned. What the hell could that be? After the 3rd time, I finally got out of bed and walked over to the window of the guest bedroom. The water pouring down on the window made it extra hard to see what
Well, that
was out
weapon's
there in the
cursed,
dark
and that's gonna
fields.
screw me up.
A flash of lightning momentarily lit up the property, but I couldn't see anything. However, once again, the sound of a metal hit accompanied it. The sound was so close now, it sounded like it was coming from the left of the window at a blind spot. I was going to do something I knew my uncle wouldn't be happy about. It would be a bit messy, but I was going to open the window and peer outside
That's
to see if I
bad.
could see what the sound
God
was.
damn it.
I unhooked the window lock and slid it up, and immediately the wind of the storm blew drops of rain into the room and onto me.
Ooh, what do you have?
I stuck my
Can I
head out the
mace?
window and looked to the left. And at that very moment, lightning lit up the property once again, and I could see a person dressed in all black crouched down by the outside basement door with his hand raised in the air.
Bro.
And before the sky went dark, I caught the briefest glimpse of what the sound was coming from. The person was bashing at the basement door lock. I pulled my head in and quietly shut the window, making sure to lock it. I was in a panic. I feared he might have seen or heard me. I ran back to bed and pretended to be asleep, facing away from the window. Lightning crashed once again, but this time there was no metallic thud. My heart must have dropped as I realized this.
Oh, I'm beat.
I just stayed put in bed for the longest time, hoping whoever was out there would go away. After maybe 3 more lightning crashes without any thuds accompanying them, I thought it would be safe to go tell my uncle. I turned to face the window and screamed. There was a figure, clear as day, standing at the window, looking in at me. I screamed as loud as I could and ran straight to my uncle's room. He went outside with his hunting rifle with nothing on but his pajamas, not even socks. He ran around the entire property yelling like a madman, but didn't find anyone. The next morning, we were able to better see the marks on the basement door lock. It was almost bashed open. Maybe 3 or 4 more good hits would have done it, according to my uncle. He was proud of me for picking up on it. Luckily, I was out of there that same day. My uncle hasn't told us of any incidents since, so I think he's been okay. Not that we talked to him much at all. I'm grateful I stayed up a little later that night watching that movie, because I may have just stopped a robbery, or possibly much worse.
Ah. Damn, this hurts.
I don't care if anyone judges me, but I like to go to the movie theaters alone. My work schedule is all over the place. I often don't work weeknights. So on a stormy Wednesday night, a night not many other people would be thinking to go drive to a movie theater, I did just that. I always like avoiding crowds in anything I do. That's just how I am. It was 2017. I went to see some low-key movie that probably wasn't at the top of most people's must-see movie lists. I was the only one in the theater, just like I expected. I sat myself right in the center seat of one of the higher up rows and put my feet up on the seat in front of me.
Let's go.
About
I was
20 minutes
trapped.
into the movie, I'd say, I noticed someone a few aisles down. I didn't notice them coming in. The theater was dark because the scene in the movie at the time was in a dark room. They weren't sitting in a seat like a normal person, though. All I saw of them was the top half of their head, peering over one of the seats to be looking in a direction that definitely was not the screen. It was still too dark to be able to tell if they were looking directly at me or not, but when the scene changed to a brighter background, the whole theater got brighter. Bright enough to see they were looking basically at me. Their
Why?
face was so pale and lifeless looking, and their hair messy and wiry looking. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. I'm an introvert, or just an awkward person, so I didn't really want to ask if there was something wrong. I viewed that as confrontation. The screen went darker again, and at the same time, the person lowered down behind the chair completely until I couldn't see them anymore. They were completely hidden from my view. I couldn't concentrate on the movie now, though. I was actually very uncomfortable. Actually quite terrified. I didn't get up, though. I stayed put in my seat. Many scenes in the movie passed. I almost forgot about what happened. Almost. Just when I was getting back into the movie, the person's head appeared from behind a seat again. This time much closer, only like 3 rows of seats away from me. I actually let out a holy shit and a loud yell because it genuinely made me jump. Now I was able to see more detail or features in their face. They actually looked lifeless. Their eyes, motionless, hung open. But still, I somehow couldn't tell if they were looking directly at me or not. Now I could better see it was a man with long, unkempt hair. I noped the F out of my seat and down the row to the exit. I had to pass the row in which the person was in to get to the exit door.
What?
As I passed the row, I looked down it, and while I expected to see the rest of the person's body sitting hunched behind the seats, instead what I saw was something you'd see in a nightmare.
He was
Some
gone.
guy basically laying on the floor, holding up a severed head perched on a stick. I didn't stick around to see if it was some sick joke or if the head was real or not. I ran for it through the exit door, and I ran out of the back exit of the building to the parking lot. I drove home in a panic, heart racing. That head looked so real. I got home and did some research about possible recent murders or missing people in the area.
I think this guy's
I
just.
found something.
This guy's just.
After
scared.
browsing a list of missing people in the area, I found the picture of a 17-year-old boy named Donald Watkins who had gone missing a month prior. And based on the picture I found, his face could have matched the head I saw in that theater. Of course, that could be my brain trying to connect any similarities. But the hair, the nose, the eyes, they looked like they could actually be a match. The next day, I simply made a call to the theater and told them the story and suggested they check their cameras and see if anything strange came up. I gave them my number to reach me if they needed to, but I never heard from them. I chose to not spend any more of my time on it. A long time ago, I very briefly lived with my good friend Ben on a quiet street in Northville, Michigan, perhaps notable for being close to Detroit. It wasn't the nicest house, or block, or area for that matter, but
God
the
damn,
price
you
was
spelled-
unbeatable for 2 broke young men like ourselves.
Ooh.
Ben and I
This is
went way
cursed.
back
I
to when
quit.
we were like 9 years old.
Bro,
and at the time of this
what?
story, we worked the
Come
same
on,
job, and
man.
rooming together with him seemed like a great idea. On our first day there, we quickly figured out that the creepy looking
come
house
on,
across the
oh,
street
come
with the
on.
overgrown grass and bushes was
This
abandoned,
is going
as
bad.
were a lot of the houses around the area.
Oh, this is
In
about to be
fact,
hell.
something we somehow hadn't noticed before, there was even graffiti next to one of the front windows and on the fence. Our neighbors on one side seemed like
Great.
creeps, and we didn't even want to approach them. The neighbor on the other side was an older dude, a very interesting hippie-ish kind of guy. His name was Marv. He had long gray hair with a matching long gray beard. He seemed friendly at first, I guess, but also very weird and hard to talk to. We spoke with him on our second day there after work. He told us the place had been abandoned for as long as he could remember. That night, with the sun almost set, while we were sitting on the front stoop smoking, I looked to the house across the street and felt a little tingle in my stomach out of shock. I stood up, threw my cigarette onto the floor and crushed it. Ben looked at me confused, and I pointed to the window across the street. I was pointing at a face, which I saw staring at me through the lone upstairs window of the house.
Oh, man.
Do you see that? There's someone at that window. Ben looked at the window immediately, but I saw the person move their head away before he could see it.
Can I get more
It's
scrolls?
weird.
That's
I
what I really need
explained
right
to Ben
now.
that I didn't even know if it was a male or female, old or young. The glass was just too foggy. All I knew was that I saw the eyes, and they were staring at us. Ben told me I was legitimately creeping him out. He believed me. We ran over to Marv's house to tell him, but strangely he didn't answer his door, even though we saw him watching TV in his tiny, messy living room through the window. The fact that the guy wouldn't answer creeped us out even more.
I'm using too much potions.
Dude, what the fuck is going on with this place? Ben laughed, but the situation couldn't stay comical for long. Ben owned a katana. He brought it to mention and suggested we go across the street with it, break into the house from the backyard, and see what was going on. We were always adventurous, daring troublemakers as kids, so this was our natural response to the situation. When it got dark, we went across the street to the backyard, broke off the board holding the back door shut, and entered the house.
Never mind, I don't have anything.
We both had heavy-duty flashlights with us to light up basically any room we were in. The house was dusty, decrepit, but surprisingly seemed to remain untouched from the inside. No graffiti or signs of vandalism anywhere. Still, the place was disturbingly creepy, and we immediately joked that we should get the fuck out of there. But we pressed on. The first floor was pathetically small, like our own. A kitchen, a tiny living room, and a dining room. There was no basement and one closet.
I just fuck up. There's
The
a
first
healing thing
floor
down
was
here I haven't
clear.
used. Okay, I'm gonna go back to
We both agreed
that.
to check the upstairs.
I just wasted a ration of
We
food.
tiptoed over to the stairs, and Ben, out of nowhere, screamed, "Is anybody up there?" "Dude, why the fuck would you do that?" I said quietly. Then we both froze in fear when we heard rapid stomping suddenly appear from above us. It was someone heavy, and it sounded like they were running over to the stairway. I literally felt like my heart stopped.
That's just
Ben, the one with the
fantastic.
katana, was the first to flee, grabbing my arm and tugging me with him. We went out the way we entered and ran back to the house, where we saw Marv just standing by his window, watching us. We didn't know what to do. He just intently stared at us as we froze to catch our breath in front of the house. We went inside, decided not to call the police, and moved out literally the next day. We explained to the landlord
what?
that
Dude,
the
this armor
location
is
was just
not
too
doing shit.
inconvenient for us, and we needed to leave ASAP. We drove away from that house and never looked back.
Glyph of repulsion is like, oh, that's
For
fire.
my
That's
son's
definitely
12th
fire.
birthday, my wife and I threw him a little party in the backyard. We invited the whole family, as we usually did for any of our kids' birthdays, and let him invite all of his friends too. We live in rural New Jersey, so our backyard connects to forest on two sides. We
God,
also
that's
have a
scary.
pretty big property, which allowed us to space out a bunch of tables on the grass with food and refreshments. The little party went into the night. Most of our guests left, but closer family and some of our friends stayed late. It was probably 8 o'clock. The mosquitoes
Oh,
were
well,
out
that's
in full
cursed.
force, so I decided to run over to the shed at the far end of the backyard by the woods to fetch the tiki torches. I grabbed like 6 torches and set them on the grass while I went back in to look for fuel. However, while I was in the shed, I heard steps in the woods. I stopped what I was doing to take a look out there, but honestly, it was just too dark to see out into the woods. After finding the fuel, I went back to the part of the yard everyone else was at and pitched the torches into the
Describe
grass.
this.
The 6 torches gave off a decent amount of light while keeping us safe from the blood-sucking pests.
Use a shield.
There were about 6 kids left, including my son, and they all wanted to play hide-and-seek in the woods. My wife and I allowed it, just making sure to tell them to stay close to the tree line. My son and his friends went to play their little game in the woods, which left the rest of us to sit in peace for a little bit. It was a solid 15 minutes of talking with relatives and hearing the kids laughing and yelling in the near distance out in the woods. But all of a sudden, the yelling turned to screams, concerning sounding screams from the kids. All of us looked at each other, sitting up in concern. The kids one by one came running out of the woods, yelling that there's something in there. We don't have bears or any big predatory animals around here, so that was not the first thing we assumed it to be. I told all the kids to stay near the patio area. My brother Dom and I, being the biggest men there, decided to go investigate. We took a couple flashlights and off we went into the pitch black
Had a lot of
woods.
food.
The only sounds we heard around us were crickets and other night bugs. So we went deeper, and that's when we started to hear something else. It sounded like an animal at first, but as we followed the sound to get closer, the sound started to become more human-like. We continued to walk, and we agreed we both had the feeling that we were being watched, like stalked. I put my arm out to stop Dom. Standing in the silence now, the best way I could describe the sound we were hearing was a moaning, angry kind of sound. It sounded human, but it was a bizarre sound. Then, a few
Oh,
cracks
this
of
is
the leaves
classic
on the ground ahead
YouTube
of
right
us.
here. This is classic YouTube.
We aimed our
What is
lights
that?
over there,
Hold on.
and there was someone or something behind the tree. The moaning sound stopped. Dom stepped forward and called out. What happened next was textbook
Oh, yeah.
horror movie stuff.
We're gonna do a shield run, alright. Alright.
A scream, so loud, so blood-curdling, so inhuman, filled the air. I'm sure it could be heard for miles. Dom and I turned and
It's an
booked it back to the
SCP.
property. We waved at everyone to go inside when we made it back. Dom got on the phone with the sheriff's department. They said it was probably a wild animal. We wanted to insist it was a human, but we honestly couldn't. We to this day don't know who or what we saw and heard in those woods, but it was definitely stalking us and the kids when they were playing hide and seek. And that scream we heard, it just didn't sound human to us.
Bruh. You guys didn't see what I saw, but I literally saw Justin Bieber.
I don't know where you've been sold, but I be insane not to play my role.
Fuck.
Stay slow. Just know that I got a hand like a lens, and it don't matter when I'll protect you. Call on me whenever, so baby, they want to move by this bed.
Yo, this shows dude Jack. What is that? Stone of Shock? No, Target Shock 2. Where's upstairs stairs?
There was a brief period of time that I lived alone. When I freshly moved out of my parents' house and before I met my girlfriend and
Damn.
she moved in, I lived in a small
I don't wanna use
one-bedroom
another healing
apartment in
potion.
the downstairs of someone else's house. I spent a lot of time alone during this period of my life, besides when I was at school or work, and so I spent a lot of my
I'm
time
good on
watching
here.
movies. Specifically, I liked watching
No.
scary movies pretty often. Even as an at-the-time 21-year-old guy, I still would be a little spooked trying to sleep after watching a scary movie, especially living alone in
that's
that
just normal.
apartment. And every time I did, I
Yo,
would
this
look around
sucks.
the
This
room.
sucks.
At a few points, I would even turn the bedside lamp on just to check around the room.
I
The
get
tenant
that.
upstairs wasn't home that night, as his car wasn't in the driveway, so the sounds I was
Here,
hearing
I
couldn't
need
have
to
been
sell a bunch of
footsteps
shit.
upstairs or anything like that. My nerves were really starting to set in at one point
I'm
because
gonna
I
sell
just kept
this.
hearing
That's
noises.
shit.
And to be honest, I couldn't tell from where in the
Keep it
house
for
they were
now.
coming
Don't
from.
need that. Don't
I
want
got
that.
up
That's
to head
cursed
over
for
to
sure.
the door of the bedroom.
I'll
and
keep that for the
opened it.
Goblin Tinker.
Outside of my
Give
bedroom
a
was a
post.
very
Give
narrow
a
hallway,
scroll
which
of
had a door to the bathroom.
identifying.
Then at the end of the hallway opened up to the living room.
Use that for the
At
chain
the end
armor.
of this hallway, though,
I can
like
wear
a
it.
scene right
equip
out of the
it,
movie I
and
had
sell
watched, not even an
my
hour earlier. There was
leather
someone standing
armor.
at the far end of the hallway,
We
right by
goated
the kitchen.
actually.
The
Ah,
moonlight from outside coming into the
scared me.
bedroom windows and the windows in the living room was enough to see her, this woman, looking right back at me. She started to walk backwards while still facing me. I didn't care though. I still screamed and backed into my room before slamming the door shut and locking it. She didn't come running over and pounding on the door or anything like that. Instead, I heard running up the half flight of stairs to the exit of my apartment, and then the door slammed shut. I was frozen in shock for at least 10 minutes before I felt okay to take my phone and leave the bedroom to check the apartment. It didn't take long. It was a small apartment with not many hiding places. It was empty. I rushed to lock the door, wondering who that could have been and how they got in.
I don't
didn't
have a
call the
key
police.
still.
I couldn't tell you why, but the next day I called the landlord and told him about it. He made a
up
phone
here.
call to the upstairs
We're
tenant.
all the way up here.
What I learned shocked me.
God, that's
The
scary.
woman that broke into my apartment was an ex-lover of the man who lived upstairs. A crazy one at that. And after finding his address somehow, she broke into the wrong part of the house. My apartment. The upstairs tenant came down to my door and apologized to me that following day. But I never got much detail from him or the landlord. I still wonder what that woman was planning on doing to him.
Chloroform. Definitely chloroform. Yeah! Damn, that was a lot of damage. Uh-oh.
I'm not a fan of my dad's girlfriend at all. Not from the start. Her name is Kathy.
What? I don't
My
want
dad
that
has been
shit.
widowed since 2019 when our mom died. And I know he's gotten lonely and he's pretty much ready to settle with anybody now. Even Kathy. And against my warnings, he doesn't listen.
Who's
I've
cat?
been seeing her do some sketchy things around the house, and it's really starting to freak
I
me
have
out.
no healing
I'll
potions.
start
I
from
am
the beginning.
beat.
I have two siblings, my 10-year-old brother Jake and my 2-year-old brother Scotty. From the day he introduced her to us, I didn't like something about her smile. It was just unsettlingly wide and exaggerated. Pretty soon he'd start bringing her around a lot more, and I just never loved her, honestly. But at first it was only because I felt something was off about her personality. Then things started happening. She's been staying with us for a while now.
Ah,
and a
damn.
few weeks ago, I caught her in my dad's closet while he wasn't home.
The
My
best
dad's
arm in
safe
the
is in his
game.
closet,
But
along with
I don't
where
know if
he
I can
hides the
upgrade
combination
it.
and some other valuables. When she saw me at the doorway, she smiled and said, "Hey, what's up, sweetie?" to me, with her annoying, creepy smile. I didn't say anything other than nothing. Then she shut his closet door, and I walked away to my room. I
if
told
I
my
could use
dad
a
about
plate
it, but
armor,
he didn't seem concerned.
I haven't used a plate armor in a while.
A few
though.
days after that, while my dad was at work again, I just got back from school, and I was walking upstairs to my
Enchant
room.
My shield.
And as I saw Kathy leave my
inscribe
little
my
brother
armor.
Jake's room and shut the
So
door
my
behind
shield
her.
has unstable
I
enchantment.
asked her what she was doing in his room.
Radiates chaotic
smiled and
energy.
said,
I think there's a
"I was
different
just
enchantment
opening
for
the
each
window.
hit.
It's hot in
Oh,
the
that's
house."
gonna be a problem.
I didn't answer and walked up to
With
my
from
room.
Tinglebit, that's great.
When I heard her go downstairs eventually, I snuck to Jake's room to check if she actually had opened the window, and both windows were shut. Something was up with this lady, and I knew it, and I still know it.
Oh god.
I told my
that's
dad
scary.
again, and in response, he asked me to just please be patient with the situation, and that he knows I don't care for Kathy. I didn't bother telling Jake. Fast forward to 2 days ago. Jake, my dad, and I were all not home, and Kathy was babysitting Scotty. I came home unannounced.
B room.
But I wanted to be secretive about it.
Let's
Because I wanted
go.
to see
The
if
honey,
I could catch
the
her
money,
doing
the
anything
gunny.
again. I snuck into the house and went to my room quietly. Eventually, from the kitchen downstairs, I started to hear Scotty crying. Not regular crying, like a very distressed kind of crying. And I heard Kathy screaming at the top of her lungs to shut the F up. It was the first time I heard her raise her voice, and I believe it was the first time I was hearing her true colors come out. I ran downstairs to yell at her to leave my brother alone. She was startled and shocked that I was home, and for the first time, she didn't give me her creepy smile. She looked at me blankly and went downstairs and shut the door. I called my dad and told him right away, and that night, my dad had a conversation with her about it. I don't know how it went, but I assume not good, because that night, I woke up in the middle of the night to something, and looked up into my room. There was someone in my room, and they quickly left the room and shut the door behind them.
Bro.
I got out of bed and opened my door, and as I got into the hall, I saw and heard my dad's bedroom door close. I went over to my dad's room and opened the door, and both Kathy and my dad were laying in the bed. I woke my dad
Kinda
up
wanna use
furiously
plate armor.
and told him Kathy was just in my room. She denied the whole thing, saying she was in bed. I don't know if my dad believed me or not.
yeah, I'm gonna
but
go
he told
for
me
it.
to go back
It's
to my
probably a bad
room
idea,
and he'd
but-
talk with Kathy.
I want to try using
I
it.
obeyed, and I heard them whispering as I shut the door. I went back to bed, and I was scared. I'm still scared. I want her out of the house and out of our lives. I think she's dangerous. Why was she in my room? It's freaking me out. I worry for my family's well-being, and I don't know what we can do.
That's it? That's how the story end? Yo, what the fuck?
The interior of an infinity is thoughtfully designed.
This one goes back
That's
a
a
few
problem.
years ago to when I was 30 years old. I was at my condo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My condo, which I still own, is on the second floor of a decently nice building that I won't name for privacy reasons. Whenever I go down there, it's in the colder months up north, and I'm a complete beach bum when I go down there. Luckily for me, I work remotely from my job through my laptop and phone, so I've been able to retreat down there whenever I'd like. Fort Lauderdale is for the most part a pretty clean and safe
Florida.
city, and the specific location my building is in is no exception. That is, usually.
God damn it.
It was the middle of January. It was late at night, past 10 o'clock. I was out on my balcony with my feet over the railing, on my laptop,
What?
and all of a sudden I heard from down below on the ground.
Did I
someone
upgrade the
yelling
wrong
something.
shield?
They were yelling, "Yo," and "Hey, you."
Oh no,
At
did
first,
I
didn't
fuck up
move,
already?
taking the assumption that
Or is that
whoever
just-
it was
am I-
talking to
No,
someone
no,
else.
no, there's no
They couldn't
way.
possibly be calling up to me. But they followed with, "Hey, you up there."
Oh,
My
shit,
heart
wasn't
skipped
paying
a beat
attention.
because now I knew they were talking to me. My main question was, why? I set my laptop down on the chair and looked over the railing down to the ground below. There was a guy in front of a car in the parking lot, looking up at me, and he said, "Yeah, you." I asked, "What's up?" He told me to come down there so he could show me something cool. I took a better look at this guy, some guy with a backwards hat and tank top on. I assumed he was just some punky kid messing with me, so I ignored him and sat back down. When I did that, I heard him laughing as he said, "I'm gonna come up there and skin you alive, you prick." I stood up again and looked at him. He had this unsettling and sinister smile on his face. I realized he looked older than I initially thought. He wasn't some kid. I literally opened my mouth to shout something back at him, but for some reason, I didn't bother. I grabbed my laptop and went inside and shut the sliding door. I expected him to yell up a couple things afterwards, but I didn't hear him do so.
Oh yeah, that's
As
worse.
uncomfortable as that made me, I felt much safer being inside. I chalked it up to just the occasional coked-up Florida lunatic on the streets.
Yeah, Florida.
But things became next level when the silence of the room was broken by pounding on my condo door, accompanied with a voice yelling obscenities and threats at me.
Oh, I didn't
It
sell
was the
these. I
guy
should've.
again. The bangs were so loud, I was genuinely concerned he was going to break the door down. All I could do was yell, "I'm calling the police." That didn't faze him. His bangs turned to these carving and stabbing noises. It probably all lasted for about a minute or two, but felt like a century until he gave one more loud, angry bang, screamed one more obscenity at me, then left. I knew because I checked through the peephole. I called the police after the ordeal just to show them and report it to them. On the other side of the door, there were several stab marks in it, confirming I did hear him stabbing at it, and confirming this man had a knife.
Oh god, that's a lot of people.
Nobody was harmed that night. I doubt he knew me. I think he was just a really drugged out crazy person looking to hurt someone. I once spent a night in jail. I know everyone says it, but I didn't do shit. I was attacked by a bouncer at a nightclub in my hometown because some girl who I had history with was there, and she had the nerve to lie to a bouncer and tell him I was touching her and her friends inappropriately, when I never even said a word to them. The bouncer came and put his hands on me and started pushing me out of the club, and honestly I pushed back in my drunken state. And of course, cops were outside the bar, and between a drunk guy and a club bouncer, who are they going to side with? Well, I end up handcuffed in the back of a cop car, and I'm escorted to jail, where I spent the night.
Oh, that's gotta
All that
suck.
was in this cell was one wooden
I believe
bar
it for
for
some reason.
sitting
I don't
on,
know why.
and this other guy besides me. He asked what I'm in for, and I told him for bullshit. I took one look at the guy, and I knew I didn't belong here. He had tattoos on his face, he was missing a front tooth, and he just had this face that said, "Don't mess with me or I'll cap you." I didn't want to rub him the wrong way, so I just tried talking with him if he
I don't
talked
want
to
to
me.
rub him the wrong way.
At one point, I did open up to him a bit, just because of my anger at the situation, and I needed to vent. During this time, I told him some delicate info, like where I was from, which is definitely the nicer side of town. I told him how I had people over that night since my parents were away, and we all pre-gamed and went to the club. I basically told him the rundown of the whole night. Since I was drunk, I wanted to just try and sleep, but he'd keep talking to me and it was getting annoying. Eventually, I think he caught on and shut up. The next morning, we had to go to court because, yes, sadly I was charged with assault and trespassing. 2 bogus charges. My cellmate had to go too. I saw the judge before him though. He was one of the other offenders in the back of the court listening to my charges. I was released with a future court date set. A complete nightmare. But that night, when I was at home, and all the windows were open, so I heard everything from outside, was hearing footsteps circling the house. Multiple sets of footsteps. I started to shut all my windows one by one on the first floor. Then I got to the backyard door, which is a sliding glass door looking out to the deck. I curiously flicked on the deck light, and immediately, 2 dudes ran out from the light into the darkness. I recognized one of them to be my cellmate. I closed the blind to the door and continued closing the rest of the windows. I couldn't believe he found me, but he was obviously there to rob our house blind after I told him how my parents were away. He must have seen dollar signs when I told him the side of town I was in, and he probably heard my
How?
name called in the courtroom, and one quick Google search of my simple name turned up my address.
Bruh, fuck
2
that.
dudes took off, I believe, because I didn't hear from them the rest of the night. I never told my parents I was arrested, and because of that, I never told them about how my cellmate almost came and robbed our house.
Liquid flame, silver potions, could be anything. Scroll identify.
EVE Online back. Immerses you in
Nah.
a universe with thousands of star systems
Ah,
like
that's
never before.
That's not really too. I don't know what this.
Follow
I don't know what this
a path of
does.
your own choosing
I don't know what the Chalice of Blood does.
And become a titan of
This is something that just happened to me, and I don't know how to feel about it other than freaked out. I'm not a spiritual person at all. I've
Man,
been
this
on and
run.
off
I don't
seeing
think
this
we're
guy
gonna win
named
this run.
Spencer.
This is
I met him
rough.
through a coworker one night when we were out together at a bar, and we hit it off. I finally introduced him to my family, and while my parents were
Another
indifferent
round
about
shield?
him,
What
my
the fuck is
grandparents
going
didn't
on?
really care for him, my grandma especially. They both said they saw something bad in him, that he doesn't seem like a good guy. My grandma mostly. This wasn't after one-time meeting though. This was after I brought him around multiple times, and everyone could get a good idea about him. And honestly, I started to see what they meant, because Spencer and I would get into constant arguments, and he would lose his temper fairly easy on me. For this, we'd be on and off constantly. There was one night that I felt like he was about to raise his hands to me, but he held back and then calmed down. This was when I said, "I'm done," and dropped him. Or so I thought I was going to. My grandma was especially happy and said I could do much better. Then she went on about how I should go find a nice Italian boy from a nice family like she always did. Anyway, not long after this,
Nice
my
Italian
grandma died
boy.
of a heart attack. During my grieving, I hung a picture of my grandma up on my wall in my room to commemorate her. This was only a month ago. I'd been having a horrible month. And out of weakness, when Spencer reached out to me 2 weeks ago, I answered, and
No.
we saw each other. We had been seeing each other every night these past 2 weeks. And I really
Yes.
thought he had changed because we hadn't argued a single
Don't
time.
be on fire, don't be on fire,
and I
don't be
just
on
felt
fire.
safe around him. Well, only a few
Yes.
days ago, Spencer and I agreed to be official boyfriend and girlfriend. And that night, I woke up to a crash in my room. I panicked and flicked on the lamp, and it took me a moment to notice the picture of my grandma wasn't on the wall anymore. I got up and saw the frame had fallen to the floor and cracked. The picture frame I hung of my grandma had fallen and cracked on the night I agreed to date Spencer. I held the frame in my hand, my heart in my throat, my whole body shaking. I called Spencer the next day and told him I think we should go our separate ways for a while, as my head isn't in the right place. And he blew up on the phone in anger. And that phone call proved my grandma was right about him. But that picture frame falling and breaking, what could have caused it? There was no draft in the room.
Oh, you know what could have
Even as
caused
I
it?
imagined that it was
Spencer.
somehow a sign from my grandma. Do you realize how freaking scary that is?
Dude, I can't carry all this shit.
I took my Jeep on a road trip to Colorado to do some off-roading in the wilderness.
Colorado.
I was doing a bunch of trails in the Red Feather Lakes, and I was ending the night off on the Dead Man's Road Trail. It was a somewhat challenging trail, but the scenery was unbeatable. I packed a sleeping bag and planned on sleeping in the back of my Jeep with the back seats folded down. I pulled somewhere off the immediate trail, just off the slight chance some other night drivers would pass by. But that was very unlikely. I guess people can call me a weirdo for enjoying off-roading on my own and camping alone, but I've always liked doing things solo. I use the word camping because I do consider this to just be luxury camping. Instead of being in a tent, I'm in the back of my Jeep in the middle of the woods.
How's your
I ate some of the protein bars and other snacks I brought as my little dinner. Then I set up my sleeping bag in the back. In case you're wondering if I was doing this in the dark, I had the LED light bar on my Jeep on, which basically lit up the entire surrounding area pretty nicely. So I finally crawl into the sleeping bag, and I'd be lying if I said it's comfortable sleeping back there. It's the price to pay for off-roading in the sunrise for me.
Nope.
I had the windows all
and
closed
when
to
I-
avoid
when I
bugs
woke up this
getting in,
morning,
but I still
or
heard
last
everything
night when I was
outside.
asleep, I turned off my
And
phone,
then it happened.
so I wouldn't get a call.
I heard a voice from out in the
They haven't
woods,
said anything yet?
followed by a short, loud laughter. As deep into the trail I was, there's no way someone was just walking around out there. Not in this total darkness. I looked out the windows expecting
Oh yeah,
to
there's
see
that music.
headlights or
The
taillights
music be
somewhere.
busted.
Nope. Then I heard the voice again, much clearer. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman at first.
Oh, wand of
Shaking
regrowth.
now,
That's
though.
actually fire.
Someone was out there, that much
Please
was
be
clear.
upgraded. Yes.
Though I was hearing
yes.
a voice, I didn't know what was being said just yet.
I'm about to get
And I
so many
laid
seeds
there,
and potions from
waiting
this.
for it again, scared to death. For a while, just crickets. Then, much closer now, I heard in a clear voice, belonging to either a woman or a young boy, "Hello, I see you there."
Bruh.
Now I was ready to throw up. I wanted to move to the driver's seat and drive, but I was too scared to move. I felt like if I just stayed laying down, that whoever was out there wouldn't see me. I know
Ow.
that makes no sense, but hiding and not moving was me clinging on to the hope that this wasn't actually happening. Then, there was one loud bang on my rear windshield, and I jumped up and practically dove over the two front seats into the driver's seat. And I started the car and drove as quickly as I could manage down the trail, scared they were running after me because I could only go so fast on this rocky terrain. I was scared to look in the
Oh,
rearview
yeah.
mirror, but when I did,
That's what.
I didn't
See,
see
maybe I
anyone
can
through
get the.
the
If
right
I can
below
get the
my
scale
taillights.
armor and a
It was
shield,
a nightmare.
I'm goaded. I
Tired,
gotta be
but drove
goaded.
the rest of the trail until I was back on pavement. Then I drove for miles until I reached a motel. Some people have asked me, what if it was someone stranded who needed help? And I say no way. No one's out there that late in the pitch black, laughing without a flashlight that deep on some trail. And they wouldn't bang on my windshield just once like that if they weren't trying to scare me. People are messed up. Always watch your back and be woke to your surroundings.
Be woke. Okay, this is gonna be hell.
Sadie's done paying for wireless bundles with things she doesn't need, so she switched to Verizon. And now, she has my plan, the first unlimited plan that lets her choose exactly what goes in it. Now, she gets to pick only the perks she wants.
Okay, hold on. Let me.
This is one of the few
Let me eat this,
unexplainable
actually.
events I've experienced in my life.
Pink.
I was home upstairs in my room, writing my paper for my history class. As far as I knew, I was home alone. But apparently I was mistaken, because my mom's voice called out from downstairs, yelling my name. I called back, "What?" She didn't answer. So, slightly annoyed because I didn't want to be interrupted from my train of thought on my paper, I reluctantly got up to go downstairs and
There's
see
a
what she
range
wanted.
battle. Holy shit.
When I got downstairs, I looked around for my mom, but she wasn't anywhere in sight. So I yelled out, "Mom?" And she yelled back my name in response. Her voice came from down in the basement. So I went to the basement door, but strangely the lights were off. I called down the stairs, "Mom?" again, and she called back. I yelled out, "What are you doing down there with the lights off?" She didn't respond. I flicked on the light and went down the stairs. I heard my mom call my name again as I was near to the bottom of the steps.
Oh, what
It
the
was
hell?
getting weird. Each time she called my name, it sounded exactly the same. Like there was zero difference in inflection every single time she said my
Activate
name.
Freeze time
I
around
yelled
me.
out "Mom" again. She once again yelled back my name. She was nowhere to be seen in the basement. But then I noticed the little crawl space closet door was open. I call it that because it's a weird closet that you have to kind of crawl into, but it takes up a large chunk of the basement. That was the only place left in the basement that my mom could be. So I said "Mom" one final time. No answer this time. I went closer to the closet door and got on my knees just to try and look in. It was pitch black inside, and I was starting to get freaked out. I said, "Mom, are you messing with me?"
Bro.
There was no response at all, just the quiet buzzing sound from the basement light. I got back up, and for some reason decided to sprint back upstairs, slamming and locking the basement door behind me. I didn't know what I had just witnessed and heard, but I went to grab the house phone and call my mom's cell number. It rang a few times until my mom picked up,
nice.
and I learned that she was out grocery shopping. I told her, but she didn't believe my story, of course. She thought I was messing with her. It took half an hour of begging her to believe me that she finally went along with it, and when she and my dad were both home, we all went down to the basement together. The closet door was still open. My dad went inside, but there was no one in there. This still remains to be the most haunting, unexplainable experience of my life.
You know, guys, I've seen a ghost too. Which I've been lacking on my ghost hunting.
I was only about 9 years old when this happened.
450.
I was
Jesus.
sleeping over my grandma's house for the weekend, which I often did when I was little. It was a stormy day out, and my grandma was out at the nearby grocery store getting ingredients for dinner. I was in the living room watching SpongeBob when the phone rang. There was obviously zero reason for me to answer the phone, but, you know, I was a little kid with a little kid brain. There's no explaining any decisions made.
Oh my god, that's the
I went to the
exact
kitchen
phone
and
call
picked
my
up the
work
phone.
has.
And
Jesus.
after my little kid voice said hello into the phone, a man's voice on the other end said, "Can I speak to the adult in the house?" I said, "She's not home." And the voice responded, "So you're all alone right now?" I remember I paused for a second, then said, "Yeah." Even at my age, I knew after he asked
Oh,
that,
why
that
would
it
you say
probably
yeah,
wasn't a
then?
good idea to have picked up the phone. The person on the other end then asked if the current address he had on file was correct, but I didn't answer that. I hung up the phone, and now I was nervous. I was worried I might have just gotten my grandma in trouble. Nonetheless, I went back to watching SpongeBob.
16.
20 minutes later or so, there was a frantic knocking at the door. I muted the TV and listened. Along with the knocking, someone on the other end cried out, "Please help." It was a man. I
Yeah,
snuck
no
over
way.
to the edge of the wall where the opening for the front door was to take a peek and see if I saw anyone standing on the other side of the door through the glass at the top of the door. That was a mistake, because I did, and they saw me too. The man on the other side of the door
I
immediately
don't really have
said,
everything to
"Little boy,
transmute
please
that
open
I
the door,
care
I'm
for."
hurt bad."
Ooh, I can't transmute
I
that.
ran
I'll
to the
transmute
corner
that.
of the room by the
Hold on.
window and closed the blinds so I
Transmute.
could hide behind
Give me a
the
better
couch.
one. Give me a better
I
one.
was so scared. There were no
That's
cell phones back
worse.
then. I couldn't call my grandma.
Oh, that's worse.
The man kept pounding on the
That
door.
is
His
just
cries for
worse.
help turning more
Oh, I don't wanna
annoyed sounding,
blast.
and his knocks got louder and more frequent. Then the pounds on the door stopped, and he started knocking on the window right next to me.
Oh,
The
fuck
creep
that.
started saying things like, "I'm not gonna hurt you," and "Please, I'm bleeding bad." I started to cry in the corner, still hiding behind the couch. The pounding stopped finally, and after a minute, I ran to my grandma's room and locked the door. I laid in her bed under the covers
Nice.
with only my head sticking out.
I did that on
The
purpose.
rain hitting the windowsill and the occasional distant thunder was weirdly calming, at least for a little bit. The man on the other side appeared at one of the windows and started trying to lift it open. Thank God all the windows were locked. Now I hid under the covers completely, and I don't think he saw me in there. This was the last time I saw or heard that man. 20 minutes later, I heard my grandma come in through the front door. I ran into her arms, crying and apologizing, and told her everything. She, of course, called the police, and when the officers needed me to give whatever details I could, my grandma called me into the room, and I answered their questions. Then she sent me back off to the guest bedroom to watch TV. Unfortunately, that man was never caught, for this at least. My grandma never told my parents, and she told me not to tell them either, but she also never left me alone again anytime I slept over after that, which wasn't many times. Long story short, I was one unlocked door away from undoubtedly being kidnapped.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Oh,
boys
that
and
was
girls,
so bad.
Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your
Five
hands
Nights at
together for the
Freddy's.
one.
No. Ah, shit. I'm gonna upgrade my.
I'm a father of
armor
two
I don't
kids.
have.
They're 15 and 10.
Fuck, I need a
My
strength
wife was
potion.
out of the house at the time of this happening.
Shit.
I was in my room taking a nap in the middle of the day. My older son is always in and out all day, every day with his friends. So when I heard the front door constantly opening and closing, it didn't concern me. But eventually, when I heard the storm door slam shut for a fourth time, I started to get annoyed and whistled at him to quiet down. I started hearing other loud noises from across the hallway, in the direction of my younger son Keith's room. I imagined he was playing with his wrestling toys or something. Regardless, even with my door shut, the noise got to be too much. It was just like a constant thumping sound. Like, what could Keith possibly be doing? When I went across the hall to his room, the noise became more clear, and it was this literal thumping on the wall sound. I went into his room. The door was already opened. I said Keith's name angrily, but I didn't see my son. I saw some grown man facing the wall, banging his head into the wall. There was blood on the wall from his constant banging.
What?
The man gave me a side glance without turning his whole head. I managed to tackle the man to the floor, and that's when Keith emerged from under his sheets where he was hiding. The man didn't fight back. He started yelling this psychotic mumbo-jumbo, proving his lacking sanity. I told Keith to go get the house phone while I held the man down. After calling the police, I was in that same position for at least 5 minutes before they arrived. The man just kept smiling and laughing and saying things that made no sense the entire time. The man was ill or on some serious drugs, or both. I didn't press charges, and I'm sure he was taken somewhere to get the help he clearly needed and to get him off the streets. I've had many night terrors in my life, and I've struggled with many sleeping disorders. Hell, I can't even count how many times I've experienced sleep paralysis.
Jesus.
It's a truly disturbing thing. I've also woken to seeing spiders and other giant bugs in my bed countless times, for them to only disappear as I start to snap back to reality.
Oh man, that
But
sounds
the
awful.
hallucinations are always so real and vivid. I always find myself jumping out of my bed screaming, throwing pillows at the non-existent
Ring
bugs.
one. I'm gonna go for a ring.
Don't even get me started on the constant nightmares I have. There was one stressful week of school that I was up to my
Increase your
ears in
accuracy?
homework with all
That's
my
not
classes,
bad.
and
I
I was
equipped
admittedly
that.
exhausted mentally and physically. With half of my assignments due the next day, which was Friday, I was up extremely late for a school night. It had to be like 3 a.m., and I had to be up in 3 hours. When I finally finished all of my assignments, I literally crashed into bed, and I was out cold faster than I could remember. And that night, I was having a bad dream again. The best I could describe this bizarre dream, I was for some reason in this linear building that I was trying to escape, and in each passing room I kept finding candies, like it was a Halloween attraction or something. But in the dream I was
Holy
running
shit,
away
it's a
from
big ass
something,
room.
and this something I was running away from kept laughing. It was a child's laughter, and it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. What caused me to wake up was when I made it to what was presumed to be the final door of the building. The laughing was the loudest now, and when I opened the door, I woke up in my bed. I couldn't move. It was happening again. Then there was a laughter from the middle of the room. I moved my eyes to focus to the middle of the room. There were 4 people standing in the center of the room. It was like a family, a tall male and female, and then a small boy and girl. They were all holding hands and they were all laughing, looking at me with giant grins on their faces.
Oh,
Impossibly
this guy
wide
has
grins.
some demons.
And as I felt this
This guy
tight
has
pressure in
demons,
my chest,
holy
which is
shit.
common in sleep paralysis, I started to feel like they were getting bigger, or just getting closer, like they were all floating towards me. When my body finally permitted, I threw the sheets off of me and threw my pillows into the middle of the room and screamed. But the pillows hid nothing, as the 4 figures were gone, and the horrible laughing had stopped. I had never experienced a hallucination like that, and I have had sleep paralysis many times. I had to see my doctor the next day, who prescribed me new medication. Since then, I've still had my share of night terrors, but nothing even close to that.
Yes, potion of strength. I need that. Oh my god, I think I'm 1 strength away from having the scale armor. That's gonna do. That's already does 4 to 30. This is 1 to 9. I need an upgrade scroll ASAP, and I am upset. 8 true Halloween stories to make your skin crawl, featuring Mr. Creepypasta and Mr. Nightmare. Sweet.
I was 22 years old, attending a Halloween party at my former best friend Nick's house, who died of a heroin overdose in 2013.
Bruh.
Before his death, he would
Look at all
hold
these
big
scenes,
Halloween
holy
parties
shit.
every year at his house, as his parents routinely flew to New York every year to attend their own friend's party. He was always a big Halloween freak, so the whole house was
I'm a
littered
big
with
Halloween
truly
freak.
horrifying
What's
props that
up?
we all knew Nick spent way too much money on. He even
Nah,
put up giant
nah.
walls of cardboard and covered them with wallpapers to create a haunted maze of sorts.
Okay, that's a new level.
I want to keep this story PG-13 rated, so I'll skip the weed, beer, LSD, and sex and get right to the part where things got bad.
Okay.
I'll
Let's get
admit,
things
we
you
weren't
sound
in our right
big shot.
minds. None of us were. Anyone who came to Nick's parties knew what went down. Me,
What does that
Nick,
mean?
and a few other guys, Vinny G, Joey, and Q, were upstairs in Nick's room smoking a bong when we heard 2 steady, loud bangs come from downstairs. Nick clumsily but panickingly rushed to open the door and see what was going on. There were sounds of screaming of both guys and girls. I remember quite clearly it sounded as if there were a crowd of people screaming for their lives down there.
What?
We all called Nick to come back in and shut the door. Even under the influence of drugs, we all knew what was going on. Nick ran back inside and shut the door quickly but also quietly, locking it behind him. He turned to us and had on the facial expression of someone who had just witnessed murder. "What did you see? What's going on?" we all shouted at him. He told us to hide before anything else. We all knew why. From that point on, we didn't ask questions. Nick hid the lights and hid in the closet with Joey, while I hid under the bed with Q, and Vinny G hid in the storage box.
Vinny G!
We could hear the blasting music from downstairs turn off, followed by a grown man screaming at everyone to shut up.
What?
One unfortunate girl let out a scream of shock and fear.
That's right
and after
there.
another bang, silence. The man started shouting at everyone again, but personally I couldn't hear it too well, and I certainly as hell wouldn't remember exactly what he was shouting. We heard 2 other men shouting. By now there were a confirmed 3 intruders in the house, but there could have been more for all we knew at that point. We heard the sound of boots stomping up the stairs and then coming halfway down the hall and stopping outside the bedroom door. The intruder on the other side of the door tried the doorknob, but when he realized it was locked, he started ramming into the door with most likely his shoulder. After a few failed attempts at that, the sound of a few shots to the doorknob were clearly enough to break the lock, allowing the door to swing open. We heard cries from downstairs after the shots to the doorknob, followed by a silencing gunshot. Me and Nick had our hands on our mouths to shield our breathing noises. I watched
Holy
through the
shit.
transparent cloth that hung from the bottom of Nick's bed as the black boots with overlapping ripping denim jeans moved instinctively to the closet. He opened the door. I could hear Nick begging for
No.
the intruder not to kill him, offering a generous amount of money if they would leave. Nick gave himself up as the house owner. That's when the intruder ordered him downstairs. The rest of us stayed put.
Holy
Apparently
shit.
Joey hadn't been caught with Nick. We stayed under the bed, shaking and afraid. There was near silence from downstairs, other than Nick talking with the
You know what?
intruders.
I'm about
but
to do a
whatever
I'm
they
about
were
to do a
saying was
gamer
much too
move right
low
now.
for us to
Wait,
hear.
can I freeze time around me?
It felt
and
like a
I
near
don't know if I
20
can or
minutes
not.
before the front door
Alright, I'm
slammed
gonna do
shut,
something.
and Nick
Oh,
came
wait.
running back upstairs to tell us that they were gone.
Oh, I'm a genius.
I think the most horrifying moment of my life was when I stepped downstairs, back into the living room, and saw the 2 dead bodies laying lifelessly on the ground.
What?
Holes in their heads spewing out blood. Jen and Robbie, 2 good friends that I still miss.
Oh my god, I need that armor ASAP.
I'll spare you the details of what happened when the police
Fuck, it's
arrived,
literally
but
right there,
despite
like,
the fact
with
that the
upgrades,
house smelled like a
I need one
marijuana
more thing,
greenhouse,
one more scroll
the
or
police
one more
were more
potion.
interested in finding out who the masked men were that killed 2 innocent college students. Oh yeah, Nicky told the 4 of us who were hiding in his room that there were 4 intruders in total, all wearing fedoras, vendetta masks, coats, and gloves. They demanded $100,000 in cash, and when Nick could not provide it, they demanded he fill their empty sack with his most valued possessions. All of the partygoers held hostage in the room were also forced to throw their wallets into the sack or they would be shot. After the incident, Nick became depressed. He started drinking too much, becoming an alcoholic. He stopped showing up to school and ultimately ended up dropping out. He started the use of heavier drugs, such as meth and heroin. I had one good talk with him since the incident, and he was more real during his talk than he had ever been.
Oh,
He told me, with tears rolling down his cheeks and a pipe in his hand, he lived in constant pain, knowing he caused the death of 2 of his best friends. Nick died of a
Damn, that-
heroin overdose in July of 2013, not
That
even a
is
year after the
rough.
incident.
holy shit. That's sad.
It was my first Halloween living in my
He
own
literally
house
died
away
from
from my
guilt.
parents. I live in a small corner house with a basement but no upstairs, a house my parents paid half for. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was sitting in the living room watching scary Halloween movies when I found myself getting up to answer a knock at the door. But then I stopped and thought, who could be at the door at 11 p.m.? Surely there were no more trick-or-treaters out. I had a pretty good feeling it was a late-night Halloween ding-dong ditcher, so I gave it a second, then I shot a glance to the porch through the window. They were gone already. Yup, ding-dong ditchers. I sat back down not thinking twice about it, and again, knocking at the front door. Get lost, I yelled. I was not in the mood for punky kids. They ignored my demand and started pounding now, not just knocking. I was pissed now. I leaped up and swung the door open. No one was there once again. I slipped on my shoes and headed outside to begin searching the bushes for the kids, but there was nobody in sight. Not in the bushes, not behind my car, not across the street. I was done answering. I didn't want to feed into their fun anymore, so I went back inside, double-locked the
Holy,
door,
so
and went to
many
my bedroom,
items.
also locking that door just to feel
But
safer,
I
I
also want
guess.
one scroll upgrade.
Even
That's
over
all
the
I want.
TV, I could still hear the stupid kids pounding on my front door repeatedly. I was so close to calling the cops to get them away, but that would undoubtedly lead to my house being egged or TP'd. The pounding continued for an uncomfortably long time, more than half an hour. I thought these kids must be filming something for YouTube and were desperate for a reaction, but I wasn't going to give it to them. At some point I dozed off with the TV on, only to wake up to the knocking again.
No.
I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the fucking morning. How could those kids still be at it, I thought. I turned the TV off and sat up with my ears open. For a few moments, my heart completely stopped as I realized the knocking was not at my front door, but rather at my bedroom door.
Oh.
I jumped out of bed, looking around my room like a madman for something to use as a weapon. They knew I was awake now. They were trying the doorknob, trying to bust down the door. These weren't any kids. By some miracle, I came up with an idea. It was a long shot, but it was all I could think of. I turned on the
damn.
receiver to my speaker
What a
system,
stupid-ass
plugged in my
dungeon
iPhone, brought up the YouTube app, typed in 45 gunshot sound effect, turned on the volume, and pressed play. The sound of a gunshot echoed out of the speakers. It sounded real enough. I paused the video after the first shot and yelled, "That was a warning shot. Leave now or I won't hesitate to shoot you in the head." And it worked. I heard 2 pairs of footsteps stomping over my wood floors and out the front door. I gave it a moment before opening my bedroom door and peeking outside. They were gone, but the front door was left wide open. I quickly shut it, called the police, and that's where my story ended.
Damn. That's crazy.
So I was never really a big Halloween person. Mostly because I grew up without many
Damn,
friends,
I got a
and once
lot
I
of
passed the age of 10, I couldn't use the excuse of
Star
going with my
Farsies.
mom anymore. And it's
I'm
not like I
blessed.
had friends to go with. So this last Halloween, I was 14 years old. I do have a little sister who's only 8, so my mom went trick-or-treating with her. My one really good friend, Steve, already had plans and I didn't want to impose, so it didn't seem like I'd be trick-or-treating this year. I felt a tiny part of me explode with happiness on the inside when my mom asked me to stay home and hand out candies.
Yes!
Now I felt like I had a job to do that didn't involve me trick-or-treating alone like a loser.
Scale or
My
plate
mom
armor, not
left with
scale
my
armor.
sister at
Oh
about
my
6
god,
o'clock,
I'm protected
about an
forever.
hour after she got home from work.
Do I have a inscribing wand? I
She
don't.
told me to expect her back around 9. So I was relaxing on the
Hey.
couch in the living room, watching the Scary Movie marathon on AMC, and occasionally answering the door to give candy to the kiddies. And while doing that, the kitchen phone began to ring. I remember the ringer was set so
Shit.
loud it actually made me jump. I picked up the phone, and the other end remained silent, except for a bit of fumbling and background noises. Sounds you'd expect when somebody's holding a phone. I think I said hello about 5 times before the person on the other end hung up.
Oof.
I just knew it was somebody pulling a Halloween prank call on me. What else could I do but ignore it? That worked well enough for the next few minutes of watching TV, answering the phone, until the phone rang again. Same unknown number coming up on the caller ID. I wanted to see where this was going,
Oh, still?
so I picked it up once more.
Oh my god,
This time
why?
I could hear very faint breathing on the other end. "Alright, Steve, I know it's you," I said into the phone. They hung up. By this point, I didn't want to say I was scared, but I was for sure a bit uneasy. It was a long time before that phone rang again. It was getting later, darker, and the doorbell seemed to be ringing less and less. I was watching the original Friday the 13th when it happened again. The sound of that phone ringing had become sickening, as I knew who it would be, or rather, I didn't. For some reason, I gave in again and picked up. And once again, silence. Other than the faint breathing and fumbling of the phone. It was like this for almost half a minute before they finally spoke in an exaggerated deep voice.
I'll be paying you a visit tonight.
Bruh.
I had enough of this joke. I told
What
them
the
to
fuck
fuck
was that
off
shit?
and hang up the phone, promising
Man,
to
Mr.
myself
Paranormal,
not to
he
pick
just
it up
doesn't
again.
got it like Mr. Nightmare does. No
I'd
bats?
say about half an hour later, out of the blue,
I want to
all the power in the house was cut. The lights went out. The TV turned off. Complete darkness. I stood up, now frozen in fear. When loud
I'm
and
done.
angry thumping came from
Shit,
the front door, I
shit.
completely lost it and began screaming like a girl, but there was something coming from outside. Laughter. I recognized
Whoa,
that laughter.
how'd I do that?
I opened the door and there he was. Stephen.
You can mine the wall
I
on
shoved him nearly
caves?
down the steps out of anger. So, that was you who made those dumb phone calls, I asked. He
Since when
nodded
can you
while
do
laughing.
that?
I didn't sound like you on the phone. Let me hear you do that voice again, I said. What? He seemed confused. I didn't say anything, you idiot. I just called and did that heavy breathing. I thought he was lying at first.
Wait.
But then my heart dropped.
Are you kidding me? I actually gotta
I had him
mine
follow
shit?
me to the fuse box outside. Just as I feared.
What
It
is
had been
this?
Opened and all the wires had been snipped.
What?
I think we ran faster than any Olympic champions back into the house. I called my mom, who told us to stay inside and wait for the police.
What the shit? This is
She then
ass.
called. The call was traced to a payphone outside of a nearby bar. I still wonder, was this just a dumb Halloween prank gone
What the
too far?
fuck?
Or was it a potential break-in? And God knows what else waiting
it's
to
not.
happen.
Wait, what?
I
What's the
don't
point of
think
going down there for getting gold?
I ever
Oh,
want to
that's not the
find
that's
out.
not the dungeon. Oh shit. Ooh, let me blast this guy off.
When I was younger,
Shit.
my friends and I went trick-or-treating every year. This one particular year, as we were trick-or-treating, we passed a man who stood still with a mask on, holding a lantern. As we walked past him, he turned his whole body around and followed us with his eyes. We were creeped out, but there were plenty of people around, so we made our way to the next house. My friends and I saw him over and over again, as we made our way from house to house, and he seemed to be following us in typical horror story form.
Come on.
We walked so
Yeah,
slow,
there you go. Perfect.
we couldn't figure out how he kept up with us.
Oh shit. Oh
At
shit.
one house, when we hadn't seen him for a while, we got our candy. As we turned around to walk back to the street, the masked man stood in the road waiting for us. Immediately, we knocked back on the door and told the owners of the house about it. The masked man continued walking down the street, and we didn't see him again that night. Later on, an adult friend of the family told us he saw a masked man hiding behind a tree, waving little kids over. And he only backed off when he threatened to call the police.
I was trick-or-treating with my friend Casey. We were both 11 years old at the time. We were walking across a small wooden bridge over a small river that many called Jack Winkle River when a black
Jack Winkle?
Jeep pulled up on the other side of the
God
bridge,
damn.
basically blocking our way. We turned around and hurried away. We were the types of kids to obey the stranger danger rules. We could hear the windows of the Jeep rolling down, and a man with a
boss.
raspy smoker's voice called for us to come back. He was yelling for help, asking us for
It's in my
directions.
closet.
I yelled sorry, and we continued to hurry away. The Jeep couldn't fit over that small bridge, so it pulled away and drove down the road on the other side.
Oh yeah.
We thought we had made our escape from the creepy driver, when here came an SUV barreling around the corner and down the street, slamming on the brakes in front of us. Once again, the driver rolled down the windows. Now with them right next to us, we could see there were two passengers in the car as well. An old guy with gray curly hair and a mustache in the backseat, who also had a raspy smoker's voice, told us to get in the car, that they have free bags of candy. The Jeep banged a three-point turn and tailed us wherever we went. At one point, the Jeep finally accelerated past us, came to a stop, and the back and front passenger side doors opened, and the two creepy men stepped out lunging at us. We dropped our bags of candy and ran straight for my house, which was in sight now. We rang the doorbell desperately at least 20 times. The old men that were chasing us couldn't run fast, and when they saw us running to my house, they turned back. My mom opened the door and we screamed and pointed at the Jeep that was backing away in the other direction. She shoved us inside and locked the door and called the police like any mom would. She reported the black Jeep with 3 men inside, older looking, raspy voices, and any other descriptions we gave. My mom was freaking out all night, worried about the fact that they knew where we lived now. My dad tried to calm her, but she couldn't calm down. Ultimately, the police agreed to send an unmarked police car to stay out front and keep guard for 3 hours. That made my mom feel a little better, but what made us all feel better was when my dad woke us up to see the flashing red and blue lights outside of the unmarked police car.
Whoa, what is that?
He had pulled over an SUV, a black Jeep.
There's katanas? Since when?
The 3 old creeps that tried to kidnap me and Casey.
Since when are there katanas?
My dad went outside to talk to the officer and most likely confirmed that those were the men. Me and Casey went to the doorway and screamed at the men for their attention. They looked, and we both gave them the finger. My mom then pulled us back in and shut the door, sending us to bed. We went from the worst night of both of our lives to ultimately the best night of our lives.
Wow.
This story took place on Halloween night. I took my 7-year-old daughter Jamie trick-or-treating for a few hours, and when we got back, I cooked dinner, we watched TV together, and then I sent her to bed. I was feeling especially tired that night, so I brushed up and went to sleep. Shortly after, my daughter entered the room and told me there was someone in her closet. I assured her there was no one in her closet. She asked to sleep with me, but I once again assured her that she was safe in her room. She reluctantly went back to her room and shut the door. I made a mental note that if she came back again, I would walk her to her closet and show her that there's no one in there. Surely enough, 5 minutes later she came back. I asked her why she thought there was someone in her closet. She responded saying she heard someone moving around and things falling over.
Oh, that's awful.
Honestly, when she said that, it kind of made my heart jump for a second. I walked her to her room and turned on the lights. I jokingly asked, "Is anybody in there?" We stood and listened.
Oh, I
didn't expect to hear anything.
I'm dead. I gotta...
There it was.
I gotta drink that.
A thud from inside the closet. I screamed at Jamie to run to the neighbors and call the police. As she did, I swung the door open and was shocked to find the neighbor's son, Randy, sitting on top of my daughter's Lego box. I grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and yanked him up aggressively. I walked him angrily back to his parents' house next door and found Jamie ringing the doorbell. When they answered, I shoved him inside right into his father and explained everything. I told him I wouldn't press charges, but if I ever caught him near my daughter again, they would all be sorry.
Said daughter.
Randy's dad, Mark, slapped him across the face, then asked me to come inside to allow Randy to explain himself. Me and Jamie both went inside. Apparently, while I was taking Jamie trick-or-treating, he had snuck into our house through an open window and hid in her closet with his friend Daryl. I asked him if this Daryl kid was still in my house. He said yes.
What?
I told Jamie to wait with Mark while I ran back into my house, and right as I entered, there he was. This Daryl kid, uglier and shadier looking than Randy. He had my daughter's underwear in his hand.
Bruh.
What I did next was completely out of fatherly protective anger. I grabbed the little shit by the throat and threw him to the floor, slapping him 4 times in the face, then hesitantly allowing him to get up and leave. The only reason I didn't call the police was because of my close friendship with Mark. But I made my point very strongly that if they ever so even waved to my daughter again, they would be in the news the next day. We went back to sleep. I let Jamie sleep with me after that incident. She was horrified. The next morning, I found a small drill hole in her closet door. The sick little bastards were spying on my daughter while she slept, at the same time playing with her underwear. Maybe you don't understand the horror of this story unless you're a parent, but there are many days where I think I made a mistake not calling the police. I still can, but nothing has happened since, and I figure I shouldn't create more trouble now. Jamie's 13 now.
Bully the fuck out of this robot.
Randy has since gone away to
college. He drops Thor's hammer. Dude, I'm just getting so much Useless but useful stuff.
We had just moved into our large new house in Mississauga, Ontario, in an area called Winston Churchill. It was Halloween night, and my parents, my 4 other sisters, my brother, and I were unpacking our stuff in our new bedrooms. We had just finished and were talking to each other about leaving our old schools and friends behind. My mother called us to do chores. I was really tired since it was 11:30 at night, way past the trick-or-treating buzz. And we had to do chores now.
Trick-or-treating buzz?
It seemed to take forever, but when I was done, I decided to go to my bedroom and get some sleep. I heard what sounded like footsteps in the upstairs hallway. Thinking it was my brother or sister, I got up to shout at them for bothering me while I was sleeping, but there, as far as I could tell, there was no one there. I rushed down to the basement where my parents, sister, and brother were considerately working. I asked them all if they had been upstairs, and they replied no. Now I was getting pretty freaked out, but I had to believe it was just my imagination and shrugged it off as if it had never happened. I went back to my bed, which was now freezing cold. I had to put on a sweater. It was just too cold. I woke up in the middle of the night around 12:30 a.m., after everyone had gone to sleep. I heard this loud banging sound that seemed to be coming from my parents' bedroom. I thought it might be my brother or sister waiting to get a drink of water, but was too scared to go alone.
Oh boy, this is gonna be tough.
The banging continued, getting louder by the minute.
I don't have a lot of healing potions. I should have like 10.
I couldn't get
only
to
have
sleep, so
4.
I decided to check it out.
I don't know why I always go
walked
bottom
into the hallway,
left.
and believe me,
It's
there was
never
no
bottom
one
left.
there. As I walked in, the banging seemed to stop. I stared at the door, only for a quick moment before deciding to go back to bed. After a couple of minutes, the banging started again. Now I was totally chilled to my very last bone. I tried to sleep again, but I couldn't. Very typical of me. The door to my bedroom creaked open, as if someone were pushing it lightly. But it was too dark to see who or what could have caused it. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Who is it? Let me go back to sleep. Very light footsteps began to move closer to my bed. I thought it was one of my sisters, until I turned onto my side after the footsteps stopped and saw a figure standing next to my bed. A figure at least 7 feet tall. I choked the urge to scream. Nothing came out. I lay there in unimaginable horror as the figure finally said, "Boo."
Bruh. What the
That was when I screamed at the top of my lungs and covered my eyes. When my parents thrust open the door to my room and flicked on the light. There was no figure there.
Oh man.
There was no figure by my bed. I cried out everything to them, the thumping, the figures. My siblings came into the doorway and watched me freak out. I asked my parents if they heard the knocking on their door. Surely they must have. It was their door after all. But they said there was no knocking. Not that they knew of. They all looked at me like I was crazy. But I know I'm not. You can't just imagine something like that. Something so real.
Bro, this is cancer. Like, this shit sucks.
I'll never forget this night. I know I won't. It was a few years ago, Halloween night. We were all 20 years old. Right at that age, where going to haunted house attractions is one of the best things to do on Halloween. The attraction was called Scarehouse Journey to the Basement or something. It was only open for 4 straight years in our town. It was never heard of again. This was its 4th and final year of operation. It was a very high quality and surprisingly scary haunted house. One of the best ones I've been to. This was not a tour-guided attraction. It was a group exploration attraction. Basically, a maze where the only way out was to make your way to the basement. find one of the keys, then find the exit and use the key you found to unlock the door. It was a very unique haunted house, that's for sure. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good night for us. And you're about to learn why. We started out in the living room of the house. To give as much detail as I can about the room, there was a giant open coffin sitting right smack in the middle of the room. There were very convincing spider webs covering just about every inch of every corner of the room. All the furniture was antique and dusty looking, and of course, blood was stained on the creaky wood floor. We could tell right away this haunted house was going to be great. The next room was the dining room. That was where things got creepy. The rooms following the dining room were all very dimly lit by artificial lanterns hooked onto the walls. On several occasions, actors jumped out at us in horrifically convincing costumes as expected. And yet they still got me every time. We actually spent a lot of time going in circles trying to find the basement. This wasn't a real wide open house. It was designed to be like a maze, with many rooms and fake doors.
Uh-oh. That was
It took a long time for us to finally find the basement door, and
Sell
I have
an
to
item.
admit,
Okay, we gotta sell. Black.
I was nervous to go down there.
bleep,
It was
bleep,
completely
bleep.
pitch black down there. We started to think that it might have
how
been an
much shrink do I have?
employees-only area where they
Oh,
kept props.
oh,
It was just
I
too
should-
dark down there to see.
Okay.
It was stated many times that no cell phones were allowed while in the attraction, so we couldn't
18.
use cell phone screens as lights. If we wanted to get out of
16.
there, we had no choice but to go down there. Each step created a creak more painful to the ears than fingernails scratching on a chalkboard. We were all laughing, telling each other how fucking freaked out we were. I had my hands out in front of me as if I was searching for anything in the complete darkness. I banged into somebody and apologized. Who was that? I asked, expecting it to be one of my friends. No answer. Whoever I just bumped into placed their hand on my shoulder, and I took off running and screaming while at the same time
Dude,
laughing.
This is trash. Isn't? Oh, there you go. Cemetery store. Who cares? I'll just read this. Identify this. 5 to 24. It already does more.
I'm a cemetery operations coordinator, or you can just call me a cemetery manager. Part of my job is sitting down with guests and family members of the deceased to set up funerals, facilitate the sales of plots, etc. A 30-something-year-old man named Antonio, very spiritual man, once sat down with me to purchase a plot for his sick father who was in hospice care. Antonio was a Hispanic man with a very thick accent, and I saw in his eyes he was a very caring man.
Antonio.
He showed me pictures of his father, who also looked like a very sweet man, much too young to be taken away from his family. But unfortunately, the man's time came that same week, and Antonio arranged for his father's funeral service at the cemetery. It was a very stormy day, the day of the funeral, which is thought to be a sign of good luck. The funeral procession stopped in front of the front office building briefly. I stepped outside under the front awning of the building and saw Antonio in the car behind the hearse. We waved at each other. Due to the weather, I went back inside until the procession was ready to proceed to the burial site. I got in one of the cemetery pickup trucks and followed the procession to the final stop, where I would stand with my umbrella supervising, as part of my job is making sure funeral services go smoothly.
God damn.
After the funeral, I did some laps around the place in the truck just to survey the area, as I did at least a couple times a day. I had a lot of paperwork to take care of, and on top of this, I had to close the cemetery that night. So a little
God
later,
damn,
I
all
went
these
back to my
traps.
desk and took care of
What the
this.
hell?
The cemetery closes at
Sticky
5:30,
done.
so as soon as it started to get dark, I drove around the place one more time to ensure all visitors had left, then drove over to the front gate to shut it. It was a relatively warm early March. The days were still on the shorter side, so by closing time on a normal day, it would already be getting darker. But on this stormy-ass day, it already felt like it was nighttime. I was driving back to my office when I thought I saw someone hurriedly walking down one of the lanes of tombstones before turning behind a hedge and disappearing out of sight. I beeped my horn so as to let them know the place was closed.
Whoa.
But strangely enough, I didn't see them again.
Oh, that stuff
I
feels
grabbed my
here.
umbrella and ran out into the rain in that direction.
Let me...
I turned beyond the hedge he turned at and looked down this long row of tombstones on one side and
got a
hedges on
fire
the other.
seed?
I didn't see anyone. I looked around in the
Damn,
rain
that-
for a solid 20 minutes, but eventually I had to
Damn it.
give up. I drove back up to the office and browsed through the CCTV footage. None of it picked up on any unusual movement, even though it was a bit harder to see much because of the storm and it was also pitch black outside now. I tried to multitask, keeping an eye on the camera while finishing up some of my paperwork, when I heard the front door to the visitation room slam shut. I sprang up from my chair and yelled, "Hello?" My first thought was that it was the same person I saw before. Maybe they got locked in the cemetery and were looking for assistance in leaving. I stepped out into the lobby, but no one was there. I looked around and again said, "Hello?" Maybe the door slamming shut was them leaving. I started looking out all the windows, and I stopped when at one of them, I saw someone on the other side, looking back at me, with a blank expression. I jumped back and screamed, and they didn't flinch. I stepped closer and made a squinty-eyed, confused look when I realized I recognized this Hispanic, older-looking man. In my head, it reminded me exactly of the pictures of Antonio's father he showed me. With my heart in my throat, I ran out the front door of the building and to the side where I saw the man, but he was gone. He wasn't booking it into the fields, he wasn't hiding in a bush nearby, he was gone. I looked around me as I stood in the rain getting soaked, then ran back inside, packed up my things, locked up, and got in my car. I opened and closed the gate, once more locking it behind me, and drove home. When my wife asked me at home why I was being so quiet, I just told her, long day at work. To this day, I think I was just overworking myself, and my mind was playing tricks on me. But it still is genuinely disturbing to think about.
Oh, God. Not that.
We've got to fight for every inch. Strength is paid for in sweat. But you're not alone. We go gym, we go max. Rain, total body fuel.
Your future in mechanical engineering technology starts here. Go 0 to bachelor's in just 2.5 years with ECPI University online.
ECPI University gave me that ability to have that degree faster. I am marketable earlier than my competition, and that makes me happy.
Online, but hands-on.
What you do in the simulated environment is just exactly what you would do in real.
My name is Jeremy. This was in the dead of October, chilly and windy. I live in a somewhat big town. It's very poor and old, early 18th century type buildings. A friend and I were bored one night and decided to go fuck around at 3 a.m. I know that going out at 3 a.m. in a
how
poor
many
town
weapons
isn't
am I
exactly
gonna
smart,
get this
but we
game?
like to have
That
our
is
fun.
ridiculous.
We got bored of driving around
Jesus.
blasting our music. We're both very big metalheads, and at that point we had our own band, so we decided it would be interesting and cool to walk around a cemetery in the town. Behind the old town square, there's a massive cemetery. It's divided by two sides of a highway, both sides taking up about 20 acres of land. As I said, it's massive. We decided to check out the older part of the cemetery. This part is completely separated from the rest of the newer cemetery with an old iron fence and gate. We get to walking around and checking out the cemetery, trying to read the old moss-covered graves, taking pictures, being a little bit disrespectful, I know. But these were graves from at least a century ago, so there was no one living that would be upset by it, and I'm sure the people in the graves didn't mind too much. After about an hour of checking it out, we sit down next to a giant pecan tree in the middle of the old cemetery. That's when we hear this little girl laughing. It was really close to us. At first I assumed maybe it was a toy left on a child's grave or something like that. I'm not one to scare easily, so I just figured it's motion activated or something like that. We are not at all easy to scare, so we both sort of laugh, pointing out that it's creepy and just keep talking and enjoying the ambiance.
What?
Then,
What?
as in all stories
What?
like this,
What?
I get
No.
the feeling of something or someone watching me. Once again, I just figured that I was letting the entire
This
thing
is
get into
hog
my
shit.
head. Then my friend says he
bull.
thinks he sees someone in the shadows of a small wooded area right next to the cemetery, of which we were really close. At this point, we're both a little
If you're
creeped
in
out
a
and decide
cemetery
to get
and
up and leave.
you hear a
And
girl
that
laughing, you're not
noise,
gonna shrug
the
it
exact
off.
same noise played again. when we hear leaves crunching underneath the feet of someone. That's when we booked it. We ran down the hill leading to the old
my
part
god,
of the
that's the
cemetery,
shit. I mean, I thought
down
someone
where
was
my
behind
car
me,
was
like
parked.
in real life.
I never ran that fast in my life. It sounded like that laughing noise was following us at that point. We both sort of just went into full fight or flight mode at that point, going as fast as we could without thinking. The noises behind us stopped as we got to my car. I started my car and put it in drive, pulling out into the highway without looking. Luckily, no one hit us. We get down the road to the only gas station that's open at this time of night to check in the back of my car. We had both been discussing how we were scared some shit had been done to it. We get around to check and immediately find the back door is open. I know for a fact neither of us ever opened it. There was no reason for us to open it. I look in the back seats, make sure nothing's there, get
that?
right back in the car and peel out. I'm still confused about what happened that night. I'm not sure if we both overreacted or what. All I know is that I still feel that weird feeling that something is behind you.
Why would you
whenever I tell this story.
what? It would be why would you want to curse something?
When I was 19,
What does
my
that
friend
mean?
Sean, who was a big goofball, came over to chill in our basement as he often would during the summer. I remember he had a Coke bottle in his hand and I was eating Wendy's when he said we should check out that creepy little cemetery
I need that infernal
across
brew
town.
for the
It was the most random idea ever, and I even told him
the
that.
king.
Still, we had no school the next day, and I knew exactly which cemetery he was talking about. I don't know if one should even call it a regular cemetery. It's just a small plot of land with maybe 100 tombstones at most. The tombstone's very archaic looking, and any time we'd pass, there would be no signs of anyone having come to visit within the last decade. The site probably
Wow.
dated back centuries, and it had this super creepy vibe to it because it was closed off by a gothic metal fence, and it was surrounded by woods on two sides, the road on one, and some old abandoned building on the other. Everything about it just gave scary vibes. It took a little persuading, but Sean managed to get me to want to check it out too. Ironically, it was a very cloudy, wettish kind of day, I guess conveniently adding to the mood. Sean pulled up his Honda to the side of the road. I told him to pull up more
It's
so
the
it wasn't
magic
obvious.
Honda.
This was a low traffic road, so it would look kind of suspicious. He pulled up a few hundred feet down the road, and we got out and cut through the woods so that any potential passing traffic wouldn't see us entering the little cemetery. Hopping the fence in the woods was easy. It was maybe a 3 or 4 foot fence. Sean kind of took the lead on this since it was mainly his venture. He led us through the eerie little plot of land, and we looked at the archaic tombstones. They all seemed to be from the 19th century. The writing on some of them was illegible at that point. I know it sounds super dumb and cliche, but I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched constantly. I started looking around the surrounding woods. I told Sean how creepy this was. "I know," he replied. Still, with the feeling of being watched, I looked at the abandoned building next to the cemetery, at one of the windows. For a brief moment, I knew I saw someone standing at the window, even through the fog, smudge, and dirt on the glass, but they casually either ducked or walked away from the window. I told Sean we were being watched by someone in that building, and he turned to look at it as well. Then he went to look for the entrance to it. I told him don't. I said we should just leave before we get in trouble. I stayed still by the tombstone he was looking at while he walked around the building, and then he found a way in. He called me over, but I stayed put. Then I heard some loud kind of crack, so I looked in that direction, and there was this older man, probably around 55. Gray hair, had on a black raincoat, I believe he was wearing jeans, and he had a mustache, but that's all I really got of him. Then he opened his mouth and screamed, not just yelled, he screamed, "Get out." He screamed it so loud I thought I saw birds fly away from being startled. And just like that, I started to feel lightheaded, and suddenly everything went dark. The next thing I remember was waking up to being dragged in the woods.
What?
I freaked out, thinking I was being kidnapped. But when I turned and got up, I saw it was just Sean. Sean was freaking out about something. He told me to follow him and run back to the car, so I didn't ask questions. As we ran through the woods, I heard something close behind me, and when I turned, I realized we were being followed by someone, so I ran even faster. We got to his Honda, and he basically put it in drive before the car even had a chance to fully start. When Sean was inside that abandoned building, he found a sigil of Baphomet painted on the wood floor, which is basically the sign of Satan. Around it were a bunch of freaky dolls with buttons for eyes. He didn't get to see anything else in the building, because he heard the old man scream at me outside. He came running to find me passed out on the floor, and he saw the old man slowly walking over to me. He started to drag me away from the old man and into the woods. He actually literally picked me up and threw me over the fence to get me out. I quickly came back to consciousness, and that's when we ran. I had only fainted one time in my life, and it was at that moment. I don't know why I fainted, but it happening at a graveyard with some kind of satanic ritual building right next to it makes it that much stranger. My grandpa passed away a few years ago. I was always very close with him. This past July, on his birthday, I paid him a visit at the cemetery. The cemetery he and my grandma chose to be buried at was about an hour drive from my apartment. My family lived closer, so they all went to his grave together. I had to go separately. It was a rainy, depressing day, and there's nothing worse than visiting a cemetery.
Assassinated. That's how it's done.
The gatekeeper of the gate asked for the plot number.
I'm actually doing pretty good, to be honest. I kind of started out bad,
It's
but
a pretty big cemetery. I'd only been
pretty
there a
good.
couple other times.
One damage.
Not as the driver, though, so I had a hard time finding it. I didn't see many other people, if any, at the cemetery that day. I'm sure the weather had something to do with it. Eventually, I found his stone and parked my car in the grass to the side.
I better get the demon
down
then.
under his stone. Stood there for a while with my eyes closed and prayed. When I finished my prayer, I opened my eyes and looked up. There was an old man standing about 5 rows of graves down, but directly across from me. He was looking right at me. I knew this man, though. It was my grandfather.
Okay, I can't.
But no, it couldn't be. I rubbed my eyes, and he was gone.
I'm gonna transmute this. It kind of
I just have a spiritual
That's
moment,
worse.
or
I'm
were
gonna
my eyes
transmute
and
for the
mind
third
playing
time,
tricks on
actually.
me? Either way, I got the chills and I had goosebumps.
Dude, come
I
on,
was
give me
quite
a
honestly
good
freaked out.
wand.
I got back in my car, said, "Love you, Grandpa."
Oh
and
god,
drove off.
I'm doing that for sure.
I felt like I had a headache on my way home. Not sure why. I was the only car on Prospect Road, a quiet road with dense
Prospect
forest
Road.
on either side. Commonly, there would be deer crossing here. As my car zipped down the road, I spotted someone on the side of the road coming up, which was odd. There were no sidewalks or a walking path on this road. I slowed down. It couldn't be. It looked like my grandpa again. When I realized this, my heart dropped 1,000 feet, and I swerved the car accidentally. I desperately tried to regain control and come to a stop. Luckily, my car didn't end up in a tree. Rather, just skidded out in the
Jesus,
middle of the
that
road
took
until
too
coming
long.
to a halt.
This whole game is taking too
I
long.
immediately looked back to where I saw him, and I saw a deer on the side of the road, looking at my car. My heart was literally racing. I was terrified. I
Oh,
was
a
not
deer?
well, and I needed to get home. I made sure no cars were coming and got back in my lane.
Imp.
I focused on the road as best I could, given what I had just seen twice. I felt weird the rest of the day. Not sick, but something wasn't right with
Golems.
my head. I went to bed early after watching an
God.
episode of my show.
I'd rather the
I
monks.
woke up at like 2 in the morning to my phone
Oh,
ringing.
that is a scary
It was an
room.
unknown number. My heart started racing again. Any call at this hour couldn't be good news.
My defense is high as
Accepted
shit.
the call
Holy
and
crap.
put the phone up to my ear. There was static on the other end. Finally, I said, "Hello?" More static. But what I thought I heard next, I couldn't believe. Just briefly, for maybe half a second, I thought I heard my grandpa's voice over the static.
Plus herbal armor. I'm good. I don't want that shit.
I tried to say hello again, but I was too shook. Every part of my body was actually shaking. Then the call cut to silence and ended. I called my phone provider the next day to trace the number. They couldn't. They didn't have enough data to trace it apparently. Though I don't know if that was just bullshit or not. The events that took place that day and night were the scariest I've ever experienced. Do I think my dead grandpa was trying to contact me?
Oh,
I don't know. Because that sounds
that's
ridiculous.
so
I
bad.
think if you experienced something like this, you'd be
But
so
I just
full
realized
of
this armor
emotion
could be
and
very
joy.
useful if I
But
can use
no,
my
it
ghost.
still terrifies me, and I really still don't know what to think or how to feel about it. Whether it sounds ridiculous or not, this happened, and I wonder almost every other night, was that really my grandpa on the phone?
Oh shit. Oh god, that's... Oh god, this is bad. Ooh. Whoa, 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 whoa. Activate. Freeze time around me, please. Bro. Dude, this sucks. Oh, I'm starving.
My friends and I were very stupid when we were teenagers.
Very
I was
stupid.
like 17 or 18 when this happened.
God
It was the month
damn.
of October, and I wanted to do something scary in the spirit of Halloween. There's a small cemetery about 10 minutes from where I live.
Thank God I have
I
armor,
was drunk
plus a
with a couple
shield,
friends.
plus
I
an
said we should
entanglement
sneak into it.
enchantment. Like, I got the highest
I'll make up
defense you
some
can
names
possibly
for my
have.
friends, Ryan and Mike.
This is great.
We were at Ryan's house. He didn't drink ever. So when I came up with the idea, he
Yeah,
was
I
the
can have a
one to
little
drive us
ghost
to the
buddy. If I
cemetery.
can get one of these weapons up.
Mike and I were really the ones leading this. Ryan was just along for the ride. But then again, he hadn't been drinking. Ryan parked in some parking lot across the street. It was a ghost town because it was past midnight at that point. We made sure no one was around to see us as we hopped the fence into the cemetery. It wasn't exactly pitch black out, but it was slightly hard to see more than 10 feet in front of us. So we were all using our iPhone flashlights. There didn't appear to be any night security in the cemetery, so we kind of dispersed from each other. Ryan seemed to be following Mike more closely. I could still see where they were because of their flashlights. I went off a little further on my own, and I decided I'd start taking a creepy video. So I started recording with the lights still on, of course. I recorded a bunch of
Oh
old
shit, I already got
headstones
4
and the
tokens.
general eerie vibe of the cemetery at night. I didn't see Mike and Ryan anymore, so I started to go look for them, still recording.
Who does that?
I looked at my phone screen and froze.
Ooh, a ring.
There was a woman, dressed in a white gown or dress, I want to say, with long, gray-looking hair. She was looking down at the ground. I looked up from my phone screen to look at her in person, but she was gone. I started to back away. I looked back at my phone screen, and there she was again. Only now she was looking into the camera, or rather looking at me. I looked up from the phone again and could not see her once more, so I looked back down at the screen again, and there I could see her moving closer to me. I started to scream for Mike and Ryan as I sprinted away from that spot. I couldn't see their lights anywhere, and they weren't answering my screams. I had a feeling they were going to try to scare me, so I ran back for the fence of the cemetery to hop it and get out. I made it to Ryan's car and texted the two of them saying they need to get out of the cemetery now. They met me at the car minutes later. We all sat in the car and I showed them the video I took. They had the same horrified looks on their faces I did. Now that I was actually watching the whole video, I could see the moment the woman slowly lifted her head from looking at the ground to looking at me, and then she starts to move towards me. We could only see her moving for like a second or two before I start screaming in the video and running away. But the way she was moving, we could see no leg movement. It almost seemed as though she were floating to me. I have that video saved on my old iPhone 4S, but the stupid thing won't turn on. It gets stuck at the Apple logo. I don't want to reset that phone until I can get that video off of it somehow. My friends firmly believe the woman in the video was a real, living person who also happened to be in the
Bruh.
cemetery that night.
Bro, no!
Find her, and only being
I'm
able to see her
all
on
the
my
way
phone
up
screen.
here.
Well, let's just say I was never a believer in the paranormal until that night.
Yo, fuck that wand. I made a stupid mistake. Oh my god, I have to go all the way down. Dude, what the shit? No. I gotta go all the way down.
Go to Fabletics.com today and get 70% off every single thing. It's our biggest sale of the year.
How long have I been playing this game?
This video is sponsored by
hours.
Scentbird.
This is a
Scentbird is a
2-hour
monthly
game.
cologne and perfume subscription service that delivers the latest perfumes and colognes for just $17 a month. You pick a scent, you get the subscription, and you receive your fragrance. It's that simple. This month I received Kinetic by Toomey, North Atlantic Right Whale by subscription, and used hunts as we would call it. One Friday when we were in like 6th grade, my friends and I wanted to have a camp out sleepover in my backyard. It was Mike,
God
other Mike, who I'll
damn
call
it.
Michael, and Jason. We all had to get
Yeah,
our
you're
parents'
getting a
permissions, of
biopic.
course. But we were like 11 or 12 and it was a Friday.
a fire
None of
potion?
our parents had any reason to say no. Plus, my family has lots of camping
yes.
equipment, including 2 tents that could easily fit 2 of us in each one. After all of us got permission from our parents, we made arrangements for them to get to my house around 5 so we could play sports in the backyard. We had 2 mini soccer nets in the yard that we used to play soccer 2-on-2. We did that for like half an hour. Then we played baseball for another maybe half hour. And after just sitting around for a few minutes regaining our energy, my parents ordered pizza for us, so we ate around 6:30 or 7 if I had to guess. The sun was starting to go down a little bit now, so now came the time to set up the tents before it was too dark. I was pretty good with setting up tents because I was a Boy Scout and we just recently learned how to set up tents. My friends kind of helped, but I did most of the work. By the time they were done, it was decently dark out. The backyard lights were on, giving a nice glow. It was now dark enough for us to play our favorite game, Manhunt. There were a
Manhunt.
million spots to hide in the
Holy
backyard.
shit, that takes me back.
We played in
if
pairs.
you ever played Manhunt
It
in
was
a
Mike and I
neighborhood,
hiding first, and
Oh
Michael
my
and
God,
Jason
that
would
was
be
so
hunting.
great.
Mike and I split up.
I was the
Our goal
best
was to
in
get
that
back
game.
to the home base point, which was the back door
I
to the
remember.
house. No
Whoa,
camping by
whoa,
the door was
whoa.
allowed. The trampoline was in a far corner
Mouse
of the
is
yard
lagging.
before the woods. I crawled under that to hide. When the hunters would start looking, they had to blow a whistle to let the hiders know they were starting. Once I heard the whistle, I stayed under the trampoline waiting it out, watching the 2 of them in the distance looking around. I was waiting for a good moment to creep closer to the back door. I had my sights on the hot tub, which was right next to the house. If I could make it over to hide behind the hot tub, I could straight line beeline it to the back door. So when both Michael and Jason had their backs to me looking in different areas of the backyard, I sprinted towards the hot tub, and just as I got right behind it and ducked down, I heard one of the trash bins on the side of the house almost topple over, and then I noticed the motion detecting light on the side turn on. The hot tub was by that corner of the house, but it wouldn't have triggered that light. I went to peer around the corner to the side yard, and I saw a tall person dressed in dark clothes speed walking away in the direction of the woods before entering the woods. It wasn't my dad. I ran to my friends and called the game off, then went to tell my dad about it. We came out and looked around the woods for a few minutes, and then checked the street for any unusual cars. Nothing and nothing. He said we should sleep inside tonight, which obviously bummed us out. We went inside and just played a game on my PlayStation. I again described to my friends what I saw, just some tall guy walking into the woods on the side of the house after apparently almost knocking over one of our trash bins. We talked about just going back outside and sleeping in the tents since they were already set up anyway. And plus, what were the odds whoever that was still out there hours later? After we finished playing our game, we went back outside quietly to not wake my dad up. It's not like we were hiding the fact that we were going back out there, but we didn't want to advertise it either. We each had a sleeping bag. Mike and I shared a tent, while Michael and Jason shared the other. After a while of joking around and yelling things between tents, we started to quiet down and try to go to sleep. I wasn't asleep yet, but it seemed like Mike was. I started hearing walking sounds in the grass nearby, approaching the tent, and then the zipper to the tent was unzipped, and I looked up and saw my dad looking inside the tent. He said, "What are you guys doing out here?" I replied to him something like, they wanted to sleep out here, so we came back out. Then I
What?
took a closer look at the face peering into the tent. I realized it wasn't my dad, but some complete stranger who looked to be my dad's age. It looked like he was about to come in when I screamed bloody murder like a little girl. Everyone woke up, and Mike started to scream as well. The man grabbed our ankles and said to be quiet, but he gave up when he realized he was about to be exposed. He left the tent and disappeared. I told my friends to run inside the house, and as we were running to the house, my dad was already coming out the back door in response to our screams. I told him I don't know which way he went, but that the man from before was back. My dad ran around the yard, screaming and taunting the creep to come back if he has any balls. We heard it from inside the living room. My mom called the police, of course, and all that really happened when the police officer showed up was he took my recount of what happened, and I'm sure he made a police report, then left. It was good to have a police report at least, so that the cops would be aware of a creep going around. I'm not sure if that man ever came back to our property or not, or if he ever got in trouble for something similar. Either way, it was pretty traumatizing, and it could have gone much worse.
I got no.
This was
mate.
back a few years, sometime in 2019. I was at a friend's house. I'll call her M for the sake of the story. I was pretty excited for this sleepover. I couldn't wait to talk about all the middle school drama. Now, something you might want to know is M's house was deep in the woods. I mean deep. Anywhere you looked, there was woods, and their nearest neighbor was about a half-mile away. But on the backside of her house was a cliff that led down to the ocean. The night at M's house started off pretty good. Our friend Sam was there too. We played Truth or Dare, Hide and Seek, and other teenage games. It was getting pretty late, but we decided to go on a walk down the gravel road that led to the other houses along the way.
Holy
We
shit,
asked
what a
her mom,
game.
and she said yes, so we
If
started
I can
walking.
get that curse after
another
I get the
10
curse
to
of
15
Yendor,
minutes, we
that
saw a
would be
man
lit.
who was walking on the other side of the street towards us.
Shit.
At first, we weren't thinking much. Maybe this dude was just taking an evening walk as well. But something that didn't seem right was that this man was wearing pretty thick clothing. I'm talking, it almost looked like snow gear. And not to mention, it was pretty warm out. At that moment, it was like 60 degrees outside. We all looked at each other as we passed the guy, and that's when it hit us. The stench. The disgusting smell coming off that guy. It was absolutely horrible.
What?
Words could not
Why?
describe how disgusting that smell was.
Why did that
It
happen?
was so bad that after we finally got a few feet away, my friend took a deep breath, almost like she had been holding it. One of my friends ran into the woods and almost threw up. At this
What?
point, we felt it was best to head back. Our friend who almost threw up was begging to go back anyway. We all agreed that it would be the best idea to head back. On our way back, we passed him again. This time we held our breath before we passed him. But when we looked back, we realized he was no longer walking in the opposite direction, but instead he was following us. This was really annoying. That disgusting smelling man was now bringing his stench even closer. We had no choice but to speed up our pace. We started speed walking. We still had about a mile to make it back to M's house. As we began to speed up, so did the random disgusting smelling dude. We all looked at each other, scared and annoyed. We picked up our pace even more, almost to the point where we were jogging. But of
Damn,
course,
30
the man
damage?
sped up even more. Now at this point, we were running, and my friend Sam looked back, and then we heard it. Sam let out a blood-curdling scream as she looked back, which caused Em and I to look back as well. And what we saw, still to this day, absolutely horrifies me. This man was full-on sprinting at us. He had what looked like a knife or something sharp in his grasp. Em, Sam, and I started screaming as we were sprinting down the road. Our screams caused him to stop chasing us, and he eventually just stopped. But he didn't move. He just stood still,
Okay, this is gonna be
watching
tough.
as
Let me
we
think
left.
how I'm gonna do this.
He didn't stay around to see what his intentions were. He just ran straight back
I
to
have
Em's
10
house.
healing potions. How?
Once we got back, we
That is
slammed the door
awesome.
and decided on not telling her parents,
Ooh,
as they were
retribution.
already asleep. We all went to the living room to finish setting up our sleeping areas. A few hours passed. It was about 2 a.m. at this point. We were watching something. I can't remember what, but I know it was some horror movie. Now, I mentioned her house was on a cliff for a reason. Because of this, her house has a lot of windows on the backside overlooking the view. I was sitting on one of the couches that was set up right at the window. It was pitch black outside. All you could hear was the waves and occasional wind. All of a sudden, I heard footsteps outside. They sounded like they were right by the window. I told my friends, and Em said it was probably the deer that always comes by. For 2 years now, Em had been feeding this deer, who always came up to this very window. I got pretty excited, as this meant this deer would come right up to my hand. I decided to look out the window, and I didn't see anything. It was too dark. I said that we should go outside to pet the deer, but Em and Sam said no. They reminded me about what happened earlier, and I agreed. So we went back to watching the movie. Another hour passed, and we were all feeling tired. We turned off the TV and headed under our blankets. It was about 45 minutes later. Em and Sam were fast asleep, but I felt like I couldn't rest. Something was up. I had this gut feeling that told me not to go to sleep, so I decided to look outside. The moon was just bright enough that you could see the ocean, so I spent a few minutes just staring outside. As I was staring outside, my eye caught something moving in the woods over to the left. I turned my head that way, but I saw nothing. I knew I saw something moving, so I grabbed the flashlight that was on the bookshelf, and I pointed it in the direction of where I saw the movement. Now, this was probably the worst idea I could have ever had, because when I did so, I saw that man again, but this time he didn't have any snow gear on. Instead, he was completely shirtless, and I wasn't about to find out what else he didn't have on. So I tried to wake up Em and Sam and tell them what I saw. Sam woke up, but Em was a deep sleeper. I told Sam to look outside, but when we looked, he was gone. Sam looked at me with a pretty angry expression, like I was just messing with her. I told her I wasn't, but she didn't believe me.
Teammate.
She went back to bed, and I was left laying there.
It
was now about 4:30 in the morning.
Brew.
It was still dark outside. I didn't sleep at all. I felt myself drifting off to sleep when I heard a knock on the door. I almost jumped off the couch when I heard it.
I saved myself.
I knew I shouldn't open it, but my curiosity got the best of me. I walked over to the door and looked out of the peephole, and again I saw nothing. My head had to be playing with me. I again went back to the couch and threw my blanket over my head. I eventually fell asleep.
I was gonna read
woke up at around 5 a.m. in a cold sweat.
I couldn't. So
something wasn't right again.
On fire.
My body wouldn't stop shaking. And then it hit me. That familiar stench. That disgusting smell.
Shadow Clone.
I almost threw up right there. But as fast as I sat up, I heard footsteps coming towards me and I screamed. I flicked on the flashlight, and as I did, I saw him, the man from earlier, standing in the corner of the room. My scream woke up Em and Sam, and they screamed too. And as we did this, the man bolted out of the house. Em's mom and dad came running down the stairs, and after a few minutes, we told them everything that happened.
I fucked up!
Em's mom called the cops, while Em's dad walked down the road with a shotgun, seeing if he could find the man. After that, once the police arrived and got all of our stories, I went home. My parents didn't tell me much when I got home. They hugged me for what felt like hours. And from that moment, I wasn't allowed at sleepovers anymore. Only now, years later, did I finally realize just how bad everything was. The police eventually found the guy, and inside that old shed we were daring each other to go into were 5 dead bodies. And that stench that was on that man's body was the smell of decaying flesh. And if things didn't go the way they went, in the end, my friends and I would have ended up in that shed.
Life is about relationships. At WakeMed Primary Care, we're about relationships too. Relationships that are with you every dance step of the way. From routine and preventive care to chronic conditions and specialty referrals. A partnership
then I can have
with
a shadow
provider
clone
near
and
you
a ghost.
who knows you and your health like no one else.
Holy
WakeMed
crap.
Primary Care for
I got a
each
group.
and
I'm
every
stacked.
one of you.
I work in risk management for a big bank in
How long
Manhattan.
is my shadow clone stay?
I've met a lot of cool people through this job. I go out to happy hour all the time with my coworkers. In 2019,
Oh, there goes my buddies.
a new guy named Sebastian was transferred to our office. I met him on his first day in the office. He seemed
where's the
very
demon
sociable
altar?
and talkative, and he'd always be laughing and smiling. He went out to happy hour with us that Friday, and he truly was the life of the party. Always talking about all of his experiences, all the places he's been and things he's done. There was not a dull moment with him. Eventually, Sebastian and I became friendly, and we went out together once in a while on weekends. I came to realize the more I got to know him that a lot of what he said may have been fabrications. His stories about all these beautiful women he allegedly got with, all these stories of hanging with celebrities. I started to just take everything that he said with a grain of salt, but I kept hanging with him because he was just easy to hang out with and kind of funny. Sebastian one day invited me to go with him and his sister to their condo in St. Pete Beach, Florida. His mom is very wealthy, owning a place in Beverly Hills, Colorado, and St. Pete. She wouldn't be at the condo this particular weekend, so Sebastian said it would be fun. I invited my little brother to come along too. We all took the same flight. I met Sebastian's sister at the airport. She seemed pretty interesting. Hard to explain, but she was a bit quirky. The condo was actually decently nice. It had 3 bedrooms. I'd never been in a condo with 3 bedrooms before. Sebastian and his sister took a room each, so my brother Tyler and I shared a room. I told him if we meet any girls, he's sleeping on the couch though. Since we landed late, it was past beach hour.
Oh my god.
We went out to some beach bars which were pretty cool. It was a bit of an older crowd. Sebastian was getting really drunk really fast though for some reason. It was a chill vibe. I wasn't sure why he was downing shots. I had to tell him to slow down when he started getting aggressive with people. This was the first time I'd seen him like this. He was also going up to every last girl he saw and drunkenly hitting on them. And 9 times out of 10, the girls seemed uncomfortable. Tyler and I laughed until it wasn't funny anymore, and it was more so embarrassing being seen with him. At one point, a bigger guy got in his face for talking to his girl, and I had to pull Sebastian away and apologize to the guy to de-escalate things. As we walked away, Sebastian pushed me and called me a piece of shit for not having his back. Tyler and I told him to just calm down. Even his sister was telling him to relax. Sebastian stormed off, I'm assuming back to the condo. His sister didn't say anything and just followed. This was an extremely bizarre start to the weekend. Tyler and I stayed and finished our drinks. These girls even came up to us and asked how we knew him, making a joke of it. We actually got their numbers. They were visiting too. They said they're going downtown later if we wanted to meet up, and we said we were down. So after that, I texted Sebastian asking where they went, and he texted back immediately that they went back to the condo. Tyler and I walked back to the condo and let ourselves in. We expected Sebastian to be angry, but instead, the second we walked in, he jumped off the couch all excited like, with a big smile on his face, saying, "Are we going out tonight or what?" He was still definitely really drunk. I told him, yeah, we should chill out here for a bit first though. Then I told him about the girls' numbers we got. Sebastian asked how many girls, and I said 2. His smile disappeared. Then Tyler, for some reason, told him that the girls came up to us after he left, asking how we knew you. I think he was saying it as a joke, kind of trying to playfully rip on him a bit, which was a mistake. Sebastian stormed away into his room and literally slammed the door shut. I was realizing he must be extremely bipolar or something. I was getting off vibes now, from both of them.
Oh god.
I whispered to his sister, "Is he always like this?" And she replied, "Like what?" in a very standoffish way. "Never mind," I said. This was extremely uncomfortable. I was hoping maybe Sebastian would sober up and tomorrow would be better. Tyler and I chilled in our room for a little while. Sebastian never came out. I went over and knocked on the door and asked if he wanted to come out with us. He didn't answer. So we eventually Ubered without them to meet those 2 girls at some big clubby bar.
Bro.
As I was getting drunker, Sebastian started blowing up my phone with things like, "Where are you? How could you just leave me here? Your stuff is going in the street. Don't come back. I don't know why I invited you here." I showed Tyler and the girls, and everyone was concerned. Something was wrong with Sebastian, and he was showing it now. As much fun as we were having with the girls, we had to Uber back to the condo before Sebastian really did something stupid. When we got back, Sebastian was just sitting on the couch alone, looking at the wall. I asked if he was okay. He looked at me, then looked away and said, "Yeah, hope you had fun." Then he got up and went to his room and shut the door. Whatever. We went to bed. Tyler and I just stayed up talking to each other for like half an hour about Sebastian and about life in general.
How am I doing so good all of a sudden?
Suddenly, we heard footsteps on the wood floor outside. We stopped talking. The footsteps came over to the door, then stopped. We both heard it. I spoke up to Tyler on the top bunk, whispering that Sebastian is right outside the door. He whispered back, "I know." He must have had his ear up to the door or something, listening to us. We didn't say a word. A literal 5 minutes go by before we heard his footsteps walk away from the door. Then we heard him talking outside. He was laughing and saying stuff, but we didn't hear his sister saying anything. I wanted to see who he was talking to, so I crept over to the door and opened it. I looked into the living room, which was dark, but I saw Sebastian in the corner leaning on the wall with one hand and his head down. He was laughing and talking to himself. I heard him say, "Joe is always such a stupid bitch," and then he laughed again. "My name is Joe." I closed the door quietly and went back to the bottom bunk. I whispered to Tyler what I just saw, and his response was simply, "What the fuck?" I told him we should leave tomorrow morning and get a hotel, and he agreed. We tried to go to sleep, but the talking and laughing outside went on for another 10 to 15 minutes. When it finally stopped, we heard the footsteps come outside the door again, stop for a minute, and go to his room,
why'd I do that?
and then we heard his door shut. Finally, we felt comfortable going to sleep. By now, I was shot. I fell asleep pretty quickly. But I woke up probably only 20 minutes later. I sat up, knowing something woke me up. I looked at the door, and in front of it was Sebastian standing there. I jumped and said, "Yo, what are you doing?" He then lunged at the bed, screaming, trying to apparently strangle me, yelling, "You're a piece of shit." Tyler had to grab him off of me and throw him into the corner of the room. Sebastian yelled, "You suck, Joe. I invited you here just for you to shit on my life and talk shit about me to my sister." I, of course, tried to calm him down and rationalize, but there was no rationalizing with crazy.
Yeah, that's
We packed
crazy,
our shit
alright.
and called an Uber to a
Definitely
hotel, where we stayed until Sunday, then flew home. I saw Sebastian in the office the following few weeks, but he always avoided talking to me or looking at me. And he eventually transferred to a different office, probably because of me. Sebastian seemed cool and normal at first, but he was an example of a very sick, damaged person deep down. And that night we spent in his condo absolutely terrified me. Thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Check the links below.
I'm just gonna go downstairs.
Enlisted is the free, brand new online World War II shooter. Command a squad of soldiers and participate in legendary battles of...
This video will focus on true horror stories that happened in libraries. But before we get into the stories, let me talk a little about today's sponsor,
Oh god,
Babbel.
scorpions.
Learning
The
a second or
worst.
third language can
Oh
prove to be
god,
a very
this is
useful skill that will come in handy many times in your life.
It's rough.
Babbel makes learning a new language easier and more fun. Babbel is scientifically proven to help you start speaking in no time to do my work. I still lived on campus at this point, and my suite mates could be very loud and distracting
Suite
sometimes.
mates?
This was a Wednesday night, so I had 3 classes that day and my internship. I also had 2 exams the following day, so right after I finished up at my internship, I went straight to the library. Our campus library was very big. When I got there at 9 p.m., there was still a decent amount of people everywhere, but from 9 to 10 it quiets down a lot, and I was planning on being there until 12, studying for my 2 exams the next day. Around 11, most people were gone, but there were still some around. I was sitting at one of the tables sandwiched between 2 bookshelves on either side, so it was a little more private and secluded where I was sitting. Less distractions. By 11 o'clock, some guy who looked to be in his upper 20s came into the section and passed one of the multiple empty tables and came to mine, where he sat down diagonally across from me at the table. I looked up, and he looked back at me and smiled as he was setting his books down. I looked back down and just tried to focus on my studying, and not wonder too much why he decided to sit at my table. I was going through the slides to study on my laptop, when the guy at my table said "excuse me," then asked me if I by chance was taking a specific economics course. I politely told him no, sorry, hoping that would be the end of it. But then he started explaining why he asked that, because his quote-unquote professor is a bitch and gives pop quizzes every day. I said, wow, that really sucks. Then I tried to go back to studying. Mentally, my mind wasn't completely into the material anymore now. Now I was distracted by the presence of this man, who I had a feeling was going to keep trying to talk to me. I looked up from my laptop screen and saw that man looking at me, smiling with his lips. I looked back down at my laptop, contemplating getting up and moving elsewhere, or just leaving. He then asked my name. I made up a name and said Chelsea. He said, "You have such blue eyes, Chelsea."
Eee.
This was when I started to wonder if this man was really here to study or creep on women. And the fact that he looked like he was almost 30 didn't help. I asked him what
So
the name of
funny
his
when
economics professor was.
Mr. Paranormal
He took a
or Mr.
second,
Nightmare
then said
is-
Professor Davis. I asked if he knew
not
the
reading,
first name. He shook his head no.
Reads a story as a woman with this
I went
deep
straight
voice.
to
So
ratemyprofessor.com and looked up any professors with the last name Davis at our school. And only one came up, a calculus professor whose last reviews were left years ago. I decided to get up and go ask the security worker at the front door for help. As I got up, I felt the
this
stare of
dungeon's
that man at the
fucked.
table watching me walk over to the security worker and tell him that this man was creeping me out and I don't think he's a student. The security worker walked back over with me and asked to see the man's student ID. He started looking through his wallet, then his pockets, and then he said he must have left it at his dorm. The security worker then asked what dorm building he's in. The guy was clearly lying because he didn't know what to say, and eventually just said, "I honestly don't remember what it's called." The security worker walked him out of the library, and he came back and told me to just be careful while walking back to my dorm. I thanked him. The whole rest of the time at the library, my mind was so distracted just thinking about what a creep that guy was. I did my best to keep studying, and around 12, I knew it was time to wrap it up so I could get some sleep. I packed up and left through the same way the security guard escorted that man out. He wasn't standing there at that moment. I don't know where he went. I started walking through the basically deserted campus. No one walks around that late on a Monday to Wednesday night.
Dude!
That's why eventually, when I was nearing my dorm building, and I heard at least one loud sound of a shoe hitting the
I'm
concrete
dead.
behind me, I turned around, but I saw no one there.
Oh god.
I knew for a
I gotta read
fact I
this.
heard a footstep though.
Oh
I
shit!
started to
I wanna
run
be up
now,
here.
which may have been a mistake, because the second I started to run, which was made more difficult because of my backpack, I heard running footsteps behind me. I turned and saw that man from the library, sprinting towards me. I screamed at the top of my lungs, but
Alright.
only for a second before I was tackled
That
to the
shouldn't have hit
ground
me,
and had
but
a hand
alright.
over my mouth. He kept threatening me, saying, "You better shut up or I'll kill you."
No.
I genuinely thought my life was about to end. I was trying to call out for help still, but it was muffled by his hand. He then
Oh
got to
my
his
God,
feet
this
and
is
started to
so
drag me by
dumb.
the throat out of sight of the main walkways.
You
And I
drink
saw he was
that-
dragging me in the direction of the woods right by the dorms. I managed to remove his hand from my mouth for just long enough to scream again. It was enough to get the attention of these two guys who came running over yelling, "Hey, stop," at my kidnapper. The man let go of me and started running off towards the woods. The two guys came over to me, and I'm sure they were asking me if I was okay and whatnot, but I blocked all noise out for a few moments, and I was in total shock. I completely let my emotions out and started bawling my eyes out. The two guys called university police, and I did my best to keep myself together and explain. We went to the library to ask the security worker for his description of the man as well. It matched my description of the man. The police were also able to use the footage from the library cameras to get a clear picture of the man's face. The picture was sent out to all students' phones and emails and the school website, and that same night, there was an anonymous tip that the man was at a late-night dive bar down the road from the school. The police arrived to the bar and arrested him. The level of trauma this induced on me was incredible. I can't even imagine the trauma for those who weren't as lucky as me in situations like this.
Finally. There's so many scorpions. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try
We
to
moved to a new town when
run
I was
away.
7.
There's nothing I
Any
can do
memories
there.
before that move I consider to be very early childhood, and a lot of those memories are blurry at this point. This is one of those memories. This happened at some age before 7, I know that. If I had to guess, I was 5, maybe 6. There was the local town library that our mom would always take my brothers and I to. It was a few blocks away, actually. I remember this one day. It was my mom and my little brother, who was a toddler at this point. We started the day at the mall. Probably spent hours there tagging along with our mom shopping. Whenever we'd go to this mall, she'd always bring us to the McDonald's inside the mall to get us ice cream cones.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
I remember we got ice cream on this particular day.
Is your McDonald's
because on the
horror
way to the
stories? Just gotta
library
be.
after leaving the mall, I still had some of the cone left in my hand. We arrived to the library, and there was this kids' computer section that my mom would let me stay at and play computer games while she went and did whatever she'd do. When I got bored of playing whatever old online computer games there were at the time, I got up and started walking through the aisles of books in the kids section of the library, looking for the I Spy books.
Oh yeah.
The kids section was in the far corner of the library, and while I was walking from aisle to aisle, I heard a psst from behind me. I turned around and saw nothing. I was looking at the back wall of the library, which had another shelf of books leaning on it. Then I saw half of a grown man's face peer around the shelf and said, "Peekaboo." I remember laughing and feeling no sense of danger. He did it again. He went back behind the shelf, then peered out his head again and said, "Peekaboo."
Dude.
Again, I laughed.
What the hell?
He asked me what I was looking for, and I said the I Spy books. He said he'll help me find it. He came over and took my hand and started leading me through the aisles, leading us, I guess, to the section of books that began with the letter I.
Bruh.
And there they were, at least 5 I Spy books next to each other. I grabbed my favorite one, the treasure hunt one, and he said, "Let's go sit down and play." He led me to a table in the corner by a couple children's computers, and we started looking through the pictures. This went on for some time, and he was asking me questions about myself as we played I Spy. The question that still sticks out to me the most is, "Who are you here with?" And I told him my mom and little brother. At some point after this, he said something implying that there's a kid's playroom downstairs, and I, at that age, never knew that there was a downstairs to the library. He said we could take the book down there. He led me to the door that led to the basement of the library,
old is this person?
which, for reference, is actually where
How old is
events
this
and
kid?
meetings for certain clubs and organizations are held. And there is actually a little playroom down there, I guess for parents who have to bring their kids with them during any of the meetings. The man led me to that little playroom. There were various toys in there, most notably a Lego set and a Lego table, and then there were a bunch of chairs. He set the I Spy book down on the Lego table. This is where things get really uncomfortable thinking back on. As he was trying to forcibly get me to play with the toys, I started to get uncomfortable. And around this time, over the loudspeaker, a female librarian said into the intercom, "Will Liam come to the front, please? Your mother's looking for you." At this time, the man went to turn off the lights in the room. Now it was pitch black inside. He said in the dark, "We're gonna play hide and seek." This was the first moment I was genuinely freaked out, and I started to yell for my mom. I remember he kept telling me to be quiet, and his voice was getting louder as he was getting closer to me in the dark, until he had his hands on me. I thankfully managed to run past him and out the door of that room, and I ran down the dark hallway back to the stairs, and as I was running up the stairs, I had that same childhood feeling of running up the basement stairs after turning off the lights, only 100 times worse, because I genuinely was scared I was going to be grabbed. I made it back to the main floor of the library and ran straight to the front desk, calling for my mom. She was at the front desk with a group of librarians, and I remember the relief on my mom's face when she saw me. I told her there was some man who took me downstairs, and she literally lost it.
What is
the next
that?
thing I remember from there was a bunch
Fist
of
of
police in the building
corrosion?
searching around, but I never saw that man again. He must have exited the building through a different way. I remember speaking to some woman who was probably with the police, asking me very delicate questions. I never really asked my mom about this experience that many times, because it's very uncomfortable, and I'd rather just not think of it.
Oh shit, I wasn't paying attention.
A can with more choices means there's a better way to paint every project. Custom Spray 5-in-1, only from Rust-Oleum. Welcome.
I used to work at the local public library when I was in my early 20s. I'd work the night shifts as my second job at least 3 times a week after my first job. I'd get there at 6 and would work till closing time at 9. I would also be the one to lock up the place after closing, but I wouldn't just leave right after the library would close. I'd have to shut off all the computers, do some cleaning and organizing, stock the shelves with all the returned books and DVDs from the day, take out the garbage, and only then could I leave. It was a Friday night, approaching closing time. Most of the other library staff was gone already. It was just myself and one of the female librarians left. I had made a couple last call announcements to the remaining library patrons, alerting them that the library would be closing soon. I was already cleaning up the place, trying to finish up early so I could leave and just start my weekend. The only other employee still there said goodbye to me as soon as the clock struck 9 o'clock. I announced on the intercom that the library was closed. The 2 guests that were left got up from their tables and started packing up their things before leaving through the door. After that, when I saw no one else in the building, I locked the front door. I proceeded to start fixing all the chairs to be neatly tucked under their tables, and I started emptying all the garbage cans. And when it was time to bring them outside to the dumpster on the side, I unlocked the front door again and brought them out. It was quiet outside. The library was kind of tucked away from any main roads. When I came back inside, I locked the door again. Now all I had to do was restock all the returned books and DVDs from the day. I grabbed the 2 boxes and started with the DVDs, which was easier since the DVD section was smaller. It took about 5 to 10 minutes. During this time, I thought for sure I heard something come from one of the book aisles. I started walking through the aisles till I found an open book laying on the floor, which had clearly just fallen off the shelf. I put it back in its place, and for a second I stood there and just wondered, how could that have happened? I went back to work, and after finishing the DVDs, I took the box of books and started putting them one by one back on the shelves. Going in alphabetical order, I started with the A's.
Let me drink this.
The books in the box were sorted in alphabetical order to make it easy. As I worked my way down the shelves, trying to bang this out and go home, I heard another noise nearby. 2 times in less than 20 minutes. That was no coincidence. I set the box down and started walking through the aisles of books again.
I chose the summer route. I just
realized. 2 books on the ground in another aisle. Someone was in here. I walked out to the open area with all the tables and such and yelled out, "Excuse me, the library is closed." There was silence until I heard something from across the library, from the children's section. I approached the noises, and it started to sound like some rabid animal making growling sounds. I also heard books being thrown onto the floor. It was coming from one aisle.
Shit.
As I built up the courage to peek down the aisle, I saw some woman wearing a nightgown throwing random books off the shelf.
Oh, you're gonna be a problem.
Making these disgusting animal-like sounds. I didn't say anything. I turned and ran to the office where we had the phone. I didn't have a cell phone at this time. I locked the office door and closed the blinds to the window. Then I called 911. I reported that there was some sickly woman in the library and I think they should send an ambulance. They asked if I had approached the woman, and I said no, she looked like she could be dangerous. When the operator asked me if the woman was still in the same spot, I opened the blinds, and I screamed because that woman was right on the other side of the glass, looking in.
Shadow clone.
Her pupils were so big that she looked demonic. I said to the operator, she's right outside the office. The woman started to bang on the glass, screaming gibberish. She tried opening the door, and when it didn't open, she turned around and sat on a chair facing the office. The operator asked me to keep the blind open and watch her. The woman was wobbly as she sat down, so I noted she was definitely high out of her mind. 2 police cars and an ambulance showed up to the library. The woman was put in handcuffs because she tried fighting the police officers, but nothing she was saying made any sense. She was put in the back of an ambulance and was taken away. I never found out what the hell she was on. I don't know how she got inside. Maybe while I was taking the garbage out. Or maybe she was inside before I even locked the place up. Either way, it definitely made being in the library alone after closing pretty unsettling from there on out.
How do you beat this guy? I need like fire or something, but I don't got fire. Here, let me, do I have a, I have a star flower. I can bless myself. Then I'm gonna do another pot on this guy, because this guy seems very problematic.
I'm a mother of 3, and so our grocery bills are quite high. My husband works at a tech company, and I currently stay at home raising the kids, who are 10, 7, and 3. I go food shopping at least twice a week, and I usually go to the King Cullen near our house, though I sometimes go to the nearby Target as well. Those are 2 of a very small list of grocery stores in our quiet town. To give as much context as possible, we're an Italian family and I'm currently 40 years old. This happened not even a year ago when I was 39. I was running behind on shopping one day, so I went much later than usual. The King Kullen by us closes at 10, and it was definitely past 9 o'clock already, so I hurried over to the store with my flyers and coupons. The kids were complaining about a lack of food in the house, so I had to get a quick grocery run in. Most days I'd have to go shopping with my 3-year-old daughter Haley. Since it was late and my husband was home from work at this time, for once I was able to go shopping alone, which I consider a luxury. I got to the King Kullen, which was pretty void of people at this hour since it would soon be closing. I grabbed a cart and quickly started doing my laps down the aisles and grabbing whatever was on my list and whatever was on sale. I was in the cereal aisle when I got a tap on my shoulder, which startled me.
Why is the bee attacking me?
I turned and saw a very tan man about my height with a baseball cap on, a black goatee, and a red zipper-up hoodie and jeans on. He laughed and apologized for startling me, and said that he'd been looking everywhere for a specific bag of chips that was in my cart, and he asked where I found them. I politely told him the aisle, and he said he checked but couldn't find it. So I actually led him exactly to where I found the chips. He thanked me with his awful breath, and I smiled and was about to walk back to my cart, but then he started making pointless conversation with me about why he liked those chips so much. Something silly like the ingredients or a lack of a specific ingredient. I kept trying to make it obvious that I was inching my way back to my cart. He wouldn't get the hint though.
I'm not even trying to use it.
It was when he made a weird pause and then said,
"Gosh,
you're pretty," that I said thank you, and that I had to get back to my shopping before they close. I went to my cart, but he followed me and kept talking to me. At this point, as politely as I could, I told him I really would just like to shop in peace. He finally seemed to get the hint and walked away, but for the rest of my time in the store that night, I kept seeing that man circling the aisles, and each time he walked past the aisle I was in, he'd slow down or even stop and just look down at me. I was getting increasingly uncomfortable and hurried up my shopping. When I was finally done, I went to the checkout, and as I emptied my cart, here comes Red Hoodie Guy with a whole 2 or 3 items, and he waits on line right behind me. He doesn't say a word anymore, but I felt his gaze even through the back of my head. When I was done checking out, I pushed my cart away, and the man called out, "Have a good night, ma'am," and I ignored it. As I was unloading my car, I noticed the Red Hoodie Guy in the parking lot, looking at me as he walked to his car. He got into a junky-looking Honda that must have been like 30 years old.
What the
He
hell?
didn't turn the car on, though. He just sat in it. I finally finished loading my car, so I got inside, started it, and began driving out of the parking lot. I looked in my rearview mirror a few times, and I didn't see any headlights behind me, so I felt safe to drive home.
You can try. Here, let me turn this off. Usually, when you beat the final boss, you have to try to go back all the way up to the first floor, like out the dungeon. But I have 15 healing potions, but at the same time, I can't do it. Like, even if I have 15 healing potions, that's a lot of healing potions. I still can't do it because they added that Curse of Yendor. Yeah, call it a day. See, I think I need to get that badge first. No, that's not the badge. What? Copy seed. Oh, shit. Oh, okay. We did it.
It wasn't until I pulled into the driveway and looked to my left down the
Gameplay,
street
1 out of
that I
15.
realized there was a car with its headlights
Right.
off driving slowly down the street approaching our house. It pulled to the curb a few houses down. It looked to be that Honda from the parking lot.
Yes.
I went inside the house and called my husband's name. He came downstairs looking concerned, and I told him I was followed home by a creep.
I have this on my
He
phone.
hurried outside to the
but I don't
stoop,
have it on my
but by
computer.
this time the car was already gone. The following weekend, late at night when we were all in bed, we heard some shuffling around outside the side yard. I
Thanks
shook
for
my
joining
husband to
this
go check what it
spooky
was,
stream.
and he went to slide
I
the window
hope you
open.
guys enjoyed
He
this
saw
one.
someone right below the window
And I
trying
think
to
I'll
open the
see you babies
side gate
later.
to the backyard. But after hearing the window slide open, the man looked up and started to run. My husband